All right. Let's see. We good? Hello, hello, my friends. Hello, YouTube. Trying to get all my cameras all set. All right. Hello, my friends. It's Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. And it is time for another live IC support group meeting. It is, I got to get comfortable. Hurt my back. Okay, hold on. Is that going to do it? Okay. Oh, dear God, I'm squirmy today. All right. It is Sunday, June 29th of 2025, and it is time for another live IC support group meeting. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I have worked with IC patients now for 31 years and counting. Let me see. Oh, we're getting close to 32 years. Oh my God. That's crazy. My purpose in doing these meetings is to make you so strong, knowledgeable, informed that no one can mess with you again. I don't want anybody telling you that you're damaged goods. I don't want anybody telling you that this is all your fault, or hi, Elise, or this is all in your head. Now we are getting into summer. And of course, we always want you to be out and enjoying your weekend. Thank you, Anne. It's in support of the theme that we're going to talk a little bit about today. Gotta have fun, you know? Listen, it's a gorgeous Sunday afternoon. It should be a happy day. We need to do happy things. In fact, I started today at this incredible estate sale, and I have to say I went a little bit nuts. So it is what it is. Normally, when I do these meetings, I usually do a little intro first, and then I will take your questions. Last week, we went into Zoom. We had a really, really good convo in Zoom. That is always an option for anybody who wants to go into Zoom. We can do that afterwards. Hopefully, technology will cooperate. I know the last time we did a meeting on Friday night in Facebook, the sound cut off. So who knows? You know, every day is an adventure on the internet at this point in time. So a lot has been happening in the IC world. Some of it very academic, some of it very research oriented. You guys know, if you've followed me at all, you know that I have been pounding away at the concept of phenotyping for 6-7 years now. That a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis does not give neither you nor your, and also a diagnosis of overactive bladder, to be quite honest, gives neither you nor your doctor a really clear, distinct treatment pathway. How do we get that? We get that with a more specific diagnosis. Remember that we no longer think of IC as an incurable bladder disease. We haven't now for some time. We think of IC as a pelvic pain syndrome for which there are many potential causes. Our goal is to figure out what your underlying cause is so that you can do treatments that will work for you. Because if there's one thing we know, is that a one treatment fits all approach is simply ineffective. It does not work. Here, hold on. I got to fix that camera a little bit. Is that better? That's better. Okay, so how do we do that? We do that with phenotyping. I phenotype patients every day now. I can help you on that journey easily. We do this with, usually I can figure out a patient's phenotype or give you a very close approximation of your phenotype, and then I'm going to give you a set of questions and send you back to your doctor so that we can confirm that, because you don't need a guess, you need facts, and we're going to do facts. Mary says, my dialogue is spotty on Facebook. Is it still spotty now? Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. For anybody watching on Facebook, could you do a check-in and tell me if the sound is okay? YouTube, you guys are okay with sound? All right, Facebook, you got to tell me. Give me some feedback here. Becky says it's okay. Okay, excellent. Ah, the joys of technology. Okay, getting back to my point. Our goal is to give you a more individualized diagnostic workup to find your underlying cause so that we can address the underlying cause rather than chasing your symptoms. Because if we're just chasing your symptoms, you're going to be on expensive bladder medications for the rest of your life. And yet again, it boggles the mind that there are still patients today who are still taking Elmeron, who still don't know about the tremendous risks associated with Elmeron now, particularly retinal disease and blindness and inflammatory bowel disease. And back in the old days, 20, 30 years ago, well, everybody was operating on the assumption that this was a bladder disease. So when you were diagnosed, you were usually given Elmeron, you were usually given an antidepressant, and you were usually given the diet. But of course, now we know that doesn't work. And sadly, there were patients who took Elmeron for many years who are now suffering from eye issues. And basically, they were taking a medication that the research showed that the FDA requested research shows just simply isn't that effective. Okay. So again, phenotyping. If I could have been phenotyped 30 years ago, we would have found that my bladder wall was healthy, but my pelvic floor muscles were very tight. Instead, I did bladder therapies for 20 years with no success. Once we finally checked my muscles and we found out my muscles were my underlying problem, I got the right treatment and I got better. That's the point. So anyway, what's interesting about medicine and about researchers is that there's a lot of competition. You got to understand, it takes a fairly big ego to go into medicine. It takes a fairly big ego to cut somebody open. You want somebody who is strong and confident to do your surgery. There is no doubt about that. The challenge is that when ego meets ego, there isn't necessarily a lot of good communication and collaboration. And we saw that in the early years in the IC world with American doctors fighting with European doctors. And we see it in different aspects of research because some doctors have financial incentives. So they're going to be very firm on what they believe is right about IC, while other doctors may challenge that and say, we disagree. In phenotyping, we see exactly that same thing. So the first phenotype system was UPoint. It was created by Dan Shoskis and Curtis Nickel. That was like 10 years ago. And they got a very lukewarm reception from doctors. It's like, prove it works before we're going to embrace that with you. And they did that. They did research to say, yeah, look at that. There are distinct patient groups. Then Dr. Chris Payne, who I think is phenomenal, he came up with his 5 phenotypes, which is what I use. I think his proposal was absolutely superb. Years pass, your local doctor's still not doing it. And then finally in 2022, we have new AUA guidelines, which goes, yes, we have groups. We have groups. And our job is to figure out what group a patient is in to give them the right therapy. So that was great. And now we have our latest paper, part of the consensus meeting that happened in March in North Carolina. They have now published their phenotyping system, and they too said, yes, there are distinct patient groups. So there is no debate anymore. We are phenotyping. And the only debate is really, should Hunner's lesions be part of the bladder wall, or should that be separate? And pretty much everybody says it needs to be separate. Some people want to combine stuff, others want to break it apart. But anyway, so to me, that was very, 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 very important that we now have yet more consensus, this time an international group, that you guys need to be phenotyped. And if you need help with that, you can call me and I can help you. I can walk you through that. I have a video in our IC Masterclass, episode 4, that's free on YouTube. You can go watch that too, and you are good to go. Now, we have something else that's going on that is interesting. At our meeting last week, we talked about this Elmeron expose, and we talked our investigative report, where we were able to go back and look at the initial request for the FDA to get it approved in 1991. And the FDA rejected the first application to make Elmeron a medication for IC. They rejected it because the research wasn't good. They were given 2 research studies. The first study showed no success. It was thrown out as a failure. The second study showed only one researcher, Dr. Lowell Parsons, the gentleman who owns a patent for it. He was the only one that showed success. And so the FDA wrote back to Baker Norton and said, guys, we'd like you to do another study, exclude Dr. Parsons. Let's get more doctors doing this. Let's see if his success is replicated in other clinics. And the company basically said, no, we don't want to do that. And they said, we're just going to reassess the data. So a year later, they sent it all back in, same stuff. FDA issued the same denial. No, it's not good enough. With the data you're giving us, it appears that there's only one doctor in the country who is successful at using this medication. That's a direct quote. You can find that in the article I put on our website about 10 days ago. It's right on the front page of our website. Anyway, the FDA denied it again, said, no, we really, really feel like we need to have another research study excluding the original investigators. Let's just try another group of doctors. Let's see if it works. And again, the company said, no, we don't want to do that either. Let's go ahead and give you some of our compassionate use data. Elmeron became available on a compassionate use basis back in 1986. That's how IC patients got it from 1986 until 1996, roughly in that area. The only way that the patient could get it was on a compassionate use basis. And if a medication is available on compassionate use, that doesn't mean it's been proven successful. It doesn't mean it's safe either. The purpose of the compassionate use program is to get medications to patients who don't have a lot of medications when there's no other treatment. So the company collected a bunch of their compassionate use data, presented that to the FDA, and the FDA said, okay, we'll approve it. They stopped asking for that study, and it got approved. And the very next year, we had over 400 adverse events filed with the FDA associated with Elmeron. And of course, now we know, that was back in 1996, 1997. Now we know that Elmeron use is in fact linked to blindness, retinal disease, and for some patients, blindness, etc. So at some point in time, there was some discussion of making sure that that study was done. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen where it was written when I look at the information. But it took 18 years for that study that the FDA wanted to be done again with a bunch of other doctors. The lead doctor was Curtis Nickel, who's the top IC researcher in Canada. And you know what they found? Didn't work. And Dr. Curtis Nickel said, we thought it'd be pulled from the market the next day. And it wasn't. And in fact, it's still available today. And this week, I worked with 2 more patients who have eyes that are going bad. And what's strange is, what's infuriating is that some doctors are assuring patients it's safe, especially in Europe. It's safe. And they're really not providing what I would consider to be good education about the risks. And we had one patient in our meeting last week who just said, I was assured it was safe. And I will say back to you, we have many studies now that have linked it to eye issues. So I then started asking a few more questions like, okay, how did the European Union approve it? Because it's the only approved uh, treatment for IC in the European Union. And I haven't been able to get really any information on that, but I was given some insight into why it was approved in the Netherlands. And it was approved based on old data. Like I think if I remember correctly, the most recent study was 2003. They aren't even considering the 2015 study that was the gold standard double-blind placebo-controlled multi-center study that showed that it was not particularly successful. So I think that that's interesting. So there's some discussion on that. People ask me, why is this so important to me? And the answer is informed consent. I believe that every patient has a right to know if a medication they're taking carries risks. And that's why I am standing firm on this topic. We also have a really sad, you know what? It's not sad news at all. It's a celebration. Dr. Jerome Weiss, who is here, hold on a sec. The author of my all-time favorite book. It's him right here. He just passed away, 89 years old. And I'm telling you, this guy's legacy is amazing. He was the first urologist who saw back in the 80s that bladder therapies didn't work for IC patients. He then became a master at the pelvic floor and nerves, etc. This was his love letter to patients, for lack of a better term. It took him 15 years to write this. He wanted to leave a roadmap for patients because, as you know, there are very, very, very few doctors who work with pelvic pain in the world. He was one of the best. He ran the Pacific Center for Pelvic Pain here in San Francisco for many years. Lovely, 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 kind, sweet man. But what made him all the more reasonable is that he was just so humble. I mean, I met him many times because my group. I mean, I ran the IC support group in the San Francisco Bay Area for many years. So many of my members saw him. And he came to conferences. And just what I really adored about him is that he never faked it. He never pretended that he knew something that he didn't. Like, he was really fascinated that bladder treatments didn't work for most of his patients. And he wanted to know why. And he literally flew around the world to learn stuff. And so that level of humbleness combined with that level of insight and desire to want to learn more, that desire to help other patients is just, we're losing that right now. We need more doctors to get invested in our long-term outcomes. We need our doctors to be invested in us. Doesn't it feel like we're just a cog in a wheel? Make an appointment, go in, 10 minutes, in and out. Dr. Billy looks you in the face. They're staring at a computer screen, and you walk out going, wait. wait. I didn't even get a chance to ask my question. So we have to embrace those doctors who are willing to care for us more. Okay, so anyway, I don't know if we're going to be able to get this book from his estate anymore. I have no clue. All I'm going to tell you is that anybody with a history of pelvic injury and pelvic floor dysfunction, I have never had one returned. And I make this offer every time to any patient I work with. If you buy this book and it does not help you, I will buy it back from you. Nobody has ever taken me up on this. This is the book of books, best book ever written. I think I have 5 left. So if you want it, get it while you can, because I don't know what his estate is going to do with the book. Okay. Now. What I said in my intro is, hey man, it's summer. At least for those of us up in the Northern Hemisphere. Oh, it's summer, thank God. Our long, cold winter and spring is gone. It is a gorgeous sunny day. It is time for summer drinks. We can do summer drinks now, but the challenge is when you've got a touchy bladder, you got to be kind of careful about what you drink. Here's the great news. There's a lot of drinks, summer friendly drinks that you can enjoy and never worry about irritating your bladder. Never worry about that. So, I have a website called IC Diet Project, the icdietproject.com. That's where we put a lot of our food stuff. And over there, you're going to find a ton of recipes. So, okay, so in honor, so you know what? I'm wearing my cow earrings. Why? Because hello, vanilla milkshakes, berry milkshakes, strawberry milkshakes. You can do that. If you're worried about the strawberry, take a little bit of pre-leaf. But if you want a milkshake, you can have a milkshake. Okay. Number 2, iced tea. Now this is hard. Sweet tea. Most people make sweet tea with like Lipton tea bags. That's acidic. It is definitely going to be more acidic. So instead, why don't you do spa waters? So if you want to make some sun tea, well, you can make sun tea with peppermint herbal tea, chamomile herbal tea. You can do that. That's fine. You can even make sun tea from the rooibos teas. You can make barley tea. That's very, very big in Asia. And I'm going to try that again. I've had that before. Barley tea is very, very big in the summer months over in Asia. You can do a sun tea with maybe some blueberries, some mint leaves, some lemon zest, not juice, zest. A little bit of lemon zest. There's not a lot of acid in lemon zest. You might be able to get away with that. So we have a lot of recipes for infused spa waters over our website, over on the IC Diet Project website. Of course, there are lots of other teas that you can make. But what about my favorite, frappuccinos? Frappuccinos. Listen, my happy place, especially during a fire evacuation, is used to be a Starbucks Frappuccino. You know, I remember I'm pelvic floor driven, and so my bladder wall's pretty good. So I really don't have to worry that much about the acid of coffee. A little, like a half a shot of coffee with ice and whatever creamer I'm using. The odds of that irritating my bladder were very, very low. Unfortunately, caffeine kills my heart now, so I can't do that. But that said, you can make a Frappuccino with Dandy Blend, our herbal coffee. And you know what? It's fantastic. It's really, really good. And so literally you take a teaspoon of Dandy Blend in a cup of water, throw some ice in there. You can put some banana in there, throw it on the blender, put some cinnamon on top, put some whipped cream on top. You're good to go. It's not going to bother your bladder at all. So there are just lots of really good IC-friendly drinks. What I don't want you to do is I don't want you to do energy drinks. Energy drinks would be a catastrophic mistake. I don't want you to do green tea in bottles. That's going to be a problem. We just have to protect your bladder a little bit more. Instead, look for infused waters. You can get hint water. Hint blackberry water is really good. Hint peach water is really good if you're going for the water stuff. Also, be really careful with the Kool-Aid. No, not the best. And also, there are a lot of powdered iced drinks and oh, come on, what do you call it? Like powdered Gatorade, things like that. You got to be really careful with those. There's going to be a lot of citric acid, stuff like that in there. Is Gatorade okay? Well, listen, you don't really need to be doing things like that unless you're working out massively. If we're trying to keep our calories down and our sugar content down and our citric acid down, step away from the Gatorade unless you're working out at the gym for an hour. Instead do an infused spa water instead. So go on over to icdietproject.com. We have a lot of really, really, really good recipes over there. And if you're looking for the cold Frappuccino, Dandy Blend low acid coffee is the bomb. It works beautifully and you will love it. You will love it. All right. So Eddie says, why can't they alter and re-examine Elmeron to make it safe? Well, there's a lot of biochemistry and chemistry and pharmacology involved with that. The fundamental challenge that Elmeron faces is digestion. Elmeron acts as a coating to the bladder wall, right? And so if you swallowed a Band-Aid, would you expect it to come out the other end of Band-Aid? And the answer, of course, is no. We have digestion. We have digestion. And the bioavailability studies of Elmeron were very, very poor. Literally, in the company's own study, 93% of it was destroyed by digestion. So one of the fundamental challenges here is if you're trying to coat the bladder, doesn't it make more sense to just put the medicine directly in the bladder? That way 100% of the medication arrives in the bladder and you don't have to deal with digestion. And so, that's just a really key concept here. Number two, Elmeron comes from trees and the human body is not based on trees, for lack of a better term. I think it comes from beech trees. In contrast, many, if not most of the Elmeron patients that I have worked with have moved over to a chondroitin-based supplement like Bladder Builder or Bladder Rest because the bladder wall actually has chondroitin in it. So there's no tree molecules in the bladder wall. There is chondroitin in the bladder wall. I don't know. I'm sure a scientist, a top pharmacologist would tear me apart for what I just said, but it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's why I'm not a fan of aloe. I mean, aloe is what we all had 20, 25 years ago. That's the only thing we had when it came to supplements. We had Cysta-Q, then we had aloe, and then we had Cysta Protect. But there's not a single published peer-reviewed study that shows that aloe does anything to the urinary tract. It's in IC. I mean, I've searched it regularly. The company has, some companies have their own internal studies, but from a research standpoint, it's just not there in peer-reviewed medical journals. In contrast, we do have a very large study of over 250 patients who took a chondroitin-based supplement and did better. And so that's why aloe now takes has a much more diminished role in the IC world, in my opinion. I think that the chondroitin, is just, it makes a lot more sense. Because again, the bladder is not made of plant material. Aloe is a plant. But the bladder does have chondroitin in it because chondroitin is a building block of the bladder. So, I don't know. I mean, again, that's just my opinion. Okay, hold on. I'm still dealing with my very tweaked back. I went to the physical therapist and she said, yes, it is a very specific muscle group. I'm doing something at the gym that's hurting it. So bear with me if I squirm. I'm just squirming. Amy says, my doctor is sending me to pelvic floor therapy for my recurring diverticulitis. But they've said it could help my IC because my pelvic floor is super tight. However, all that has seemed to happen so far is a UTI after every visit. I mean, at this point, it's not just sugar carbonation alcohol that causes me to flare. Swimming in my own sweat is causing me to flare and ending up with a UTI. I've been on antibiotics for 4 years now, and I do take probiotics. So, so many different ways I could go with this question. Amy, Number one, I believe you. Don't assume that I don't believe you at all. I've worked with plenty of patients who have recurring UTI. The first question that we want to know is why are you so vulnerable to UTI in the first place? What is it about your body that has made you more vulnerable? The answer for most women is estrogen atrophy. Your bladder needs estrogen to produce the mucus that normally protects your bladder wall. So we have a really thick, robust coating of mucus here. Hold on a sec. A thick, robust coating of mucus, which, sorry here, guys, my camera's being weird. So your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ that's wet on the inside, and that nice thick mucosal barrier or mucosal layer is a thick, robust barrier. It pushes urine away from your cells. It pushes bacteria away from your cells. So a healthy bladder has a really thick coating of mucus, and that's true for a healthy vagina and a healthy vulva. Unfortunately, mucus production is estrogen dependent. So when you're young and have a lot of estrogen, you have a lot of mucus. But if you're older, or if you're on Lupron for endo, if you're on estrogen suppressors for breast cancer, you don't have the estrogen anymore, which means you don't have the mucus anymore, which means that you're kind of wide open for infection. So I attended a class several years ago at the National Institutes of Health on recurring UTI, and it was taught by Dr. Anthony Schaefer. And they had worked very, very intensely to try to figure out why some women kept getting infections every single month. And so, like, literally, they did urine samples every day, they did stool samples every day, and they did vaginal swabs every day for weeks and weeks to try to figure out where and when the infection first appeared. And here's what they found. 24 hours before that bacteria arrived in the bladder, it was in the vagina. And this then led those researchers to ask, wait a second, what's happened to our vaginal defenses? Why has the vagina become a safe haven for bacteria? And the answer goes right back to estrogen atrophy. Not only are the bladder's defenses compromised, but the vaginal defenses are compromised. And this has now become a more pathogenic bacteria-friendly environment. So if you've had 2 infections in 6 months or 3 infections in a year, you are no longer a simple UTI patient. You are a complex UTI patient. And generally, if that doctor finds estrogen atrophy, they will normally give you the correct antibiotic, but they will also give you a topical estrogen product to use vaginally to boost your vaginal defenses so the bacteria doesn't take hold. So that's kind of question number 1, Amy, is why are you so vulnerable to infection in the first place? Now, the second thing that you really need to be doing is you have to do a very detailed diary of your infection. And you can't just say, hey, Sunday, July 29th, I have an infection. You need to say, okay, my symptoms started on the 25th. They got worse and worse. Called the doctor, had a urine culture. Urine culture said, yes, I have an E. coli infection. Every single time you have infection, you've got to get the name of the bacteria and write down also the antibiotic they give you. Because we have to look at what's happening over time. So if it's the same bacteria over and over and over, that suggests that you either have a very drug-resistant infection, or it suggests that there's something in your daily environment that's continuing to expose you to that specific bacteria. And where we often see that are in bathtubs with jets and hot tubs. Okay. If, on the other hand, when you get your culture results back, it's different bacteria every time. So it's E. coli once, and it's Enterococcus once, and then it's Klebsiella once, and you're just on this merry trip with all these different bacteria. Then that tells us that your immune system is struggling, and we might want to explore uh, anything that could be happening with your immune system. So, as an example, I have a family member who had bladder infections for years, and these are legit bladder infections for years, decades. And it was such a great puzzle. Why? And, it was like, is it sex? Is it sex? It seemed like it was sex. We were really not sure. They finally, a couple of years ago, did some immune testing, and they found out that she has something called CVID, not COVID, CVID, that basically her IgG level, her body has stopped making immunoglobulin G, which means that she basically has no defenses to infection. So now she gets IgG infusions once a month, and that has helped tremendously. So if you're having a lot of infections, then we really also want maybe to have your IgG levels tested, see if there's anything going on there. And then last but not least, I got to tell you, many patients have called me and said, I keep getting infections. I keep getting infections. I've had infections for 40 years. And it's like, okay, what did your urine culture say? And they go, well, sometimes positive, sometimes it didn't find anything. It's important that we all understand that the bladder only knows one language: frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. So everything feels like an infection. A bullet wound feels like an infection. A stab wound feels like an infection. A dry bladder from estrogen atrophy feels like infection. A pelvic floor spasm feels like an infection. We had one study of women who had been on antibiotics for 10 years, 50 women who'd been on antibiotics for over 10 years. And when they went back and they looked at their records, how many do you think actually had an infection? One. So the drug companies have made a lot of money on patients who have had urinary symptoms. But now we understand that, listen, if you've got estrogen atrophy and you drink a bunch of coffee, you're going to have frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. And that brings up something else that I thought was very interesting. We had a study, as I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about today. I went back and I was just going through stuff on our website and some of the research. There was a research study about 10 years ago that talked about what are the risks of drinking coffee and soda over the long term. You have a perfectly healthy bladder and you start drinking 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day or 2 or 3 cups of soda a day. Does that create a risk of developing lower urinary tract symptoms and that could lead to IC? And the answer is yes. And I wanted to read this to you. Hold on a sec, because it's right here. So this was a study done out of Boston for 8 years. This is a big, long community study. Increased coffee or increased caffeine intake increase the odds of lower urinary tract symptoms in men. If they did greater than 2 cups a day, particularly having problems holding urine. Women who increased coffee intake by at least 2 servings during the day had a 64% higher odds of progression of urgency Women with recently increased soda intake, particularly caffeinated diet soda, had higher symptom scores, urgency, and lower urinary tract symptom progression. Citrus juice was associated with 50% um, lower odds of lower urinary tract progression in men. So the findings support recommending to limit caffeinated beverage intake. And in men, they suggest switching over to citrus. But of course, God forbid you have Hunner's lesions, you can't do that. But anyway, I thought that was fascinating. The human body wasn't designed for today's modern diet. I'm sorry. You know what? It takes, what did they say? It takes 20,000 years for one evolutionary adaptation to occur. So the bladder that we have now, it's basically based upon what our ancestors were eating 20,000 years ago. But they didn't have coffee 20,000 years ago. They didn't have caffeine 20,000 years ago, much less extremely high levels of acid found in food. And so we have to ask, can our bladder defend itself? And the answer is, for some of us, no. I mean, like, I'm Scandinavian. My ancestors from Norway and Sweden, there was no citrus in Norway and Sweden. The only acid they had was unripe lingonberries in the spring. And so did my body and my ancestors ever have to develop a stronger bladder? The answer, of course, is no. And that might be different in somebody whose ancestors are from around the equator where they had more fruit, like pineapples and things like that. You can darn well bet that those generationally and over thousands of years, those bodies adapted to these higher levels of acid where my ancestors maybe not. Hi, JD. Nice to see you, hun. All righty. I feel like I'm being very wordy today. Sorry if I'm all over the place. Kayleen said, the ED program ended early. I did amazing yesterday. I did really good eating and hydrating. Had so much fun with Caitlin and Riley at the parade. Excellent. Today I'm in the fetal position in bed because of cramps. I'm about to take a gummy and then a shower. Yes, happy summer. Girl, you had a good day. You've had a couple of good days in a row. So maybe yesterday when you went to the parade, given the fact that, you got pelvic floor dysfunction, etc., that it might have just been a little bit too much yesterday. Hi, Katie. Lori says, do bladder builder and bladder rest have chondroitin? Yes, they do. Amy says, I'm on a 0.5 estradiol patch, 100 milligram progesterone, and use estrogen cream 3 times a week. Good, but girl, you got to understand. I don't know how old you are, but I mean, listen. If you're in your 50s and you're doing all that, power to you. That's great. I do the estrogen cream myself, but we'll never have a 20-year-old bladder again. Aging changes your bladder, and it is going to make it a little bit more vulnerable, or in some cases, a lot more vulnerable. Judith says, can I provide any information on low-dose naltrexone? We haven't had any new research on low-dose naltrexone, but let me look. Hold on a sec. Let me see if we have anything newly published on this. Let's see what the National Library of Medicine has to say about this. Nothing new. Nothing new, my friend. Nothing new. It is often used for chronic pain. We have a new study done actually last month, low-dose naltrexone in the management of chronic pain syndrome, a meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials. All right, let's see. We also have another study last May with severe fibromyalgia syndrome. Okay, so let's take a look at these for a moment. So in this first study, they looked at lots of different papers to see how effective it was at preventing central sensitization. Was it an anti-inflammatory? Was it immunomodulatory? Et cetera, et cetera. So they looked at 7 studies. Results: low-dose naltrexone did not show a significant difference in pain response compared to control groups. In fibromyalgia, low-dose naltrexone compared to placebo. Against active comparators, low-dose naltrexone had no difference. Adverse events were increased with low-dose naltrexone compared to placebo. They conclude that it is better than placebo in fibromyalgia pain management, but not much. It looks like it's, but not much. Let's look at this one here. Low-dose naltrexone for severe fibromyalgia syndrome. Let's see what this one says. Fibromyalgia syndrome is characterized by diffuse musculoskeletal pain associated with daytime fatigue, sleep disturbance, cognitive defects, and further somatic symptoms. While some patients with fibromyalgia respond to amitriptyline, pregabalin, yada, yada, there are still many who do not benefit sufficiently from this treatment or suffer from side effects. Naltrexone is used in many countries as an off-label therapy in low doses for several chronic immunomodulatory disorders, including fibromyalgia. However, the strength of evidence from previous trials is low. I report on a patient, so this is a case study, with severe fibromyalgia who did not respond to conventional therapy. Instead, low-dose naltrexone, 4.5 milligrams a day, resulted in a significant and sustained improvement in most of her symptoms. Okay. Anything else here? There's just nothing with interstitial cystitis that I am seeing. It's for regional pain syndromes, yes. Pediatric chronic pain, inflammatory states, yes. All right. Mary says, when someone has recurring UTI, what should we do with having a tub with jets? How can it be managed? Mary, you want to find out if the jets are draining. So the problem with jets is that, a jet is where the bubbles come out. It's where the air comes out. But the jet has to be installed at a slightly downward angle so that any water that gets in drains out. So the jets need to be like this or like this, but ideally at a slightly down angle. What you don't want is jets that are at an upward angle, because then water goes down to the base of the jet and it sits there and becomes basically a bacteria factory. So you could have a plumber look at it. You could maybe squirt water in it and see if it drains out. You could, I'm not that familiar with how you would clean a jet without damaging it. I just don't know. The jets blow out after each, yeah, I know that, but water still has a chance of dripping in and landing behind the jet. It's well documented. It's well documented, depending upon the manufacturer of the tub and the manufacturer of the jet. So it is what it is, I'm sorry to say. Okay, I just had a ginormous smoothie like 20 minutes before I started this meeting, so I need to go pee. So let's take a bathroom break. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Now, of course, what do we always say? You can tell the health of your pelvic floor by how you're sitting, how you pee. Can you let it fly and pee like a horse, or is it slow to start on a scale of 1 to 10? A 10 is, man, you can let it fly. A 1 is really struggling to start. I was like a 4. My pelvic floor is pretty tight right now. And that doesn't surprise me because I did a big workout yesterday and we're just trying to deal with this muscle that I hurt. So this is a towel, right? And I'm supposed to, okay, there you go. Okay, we're good. I think that's better. Getting older sucks. Man, when I was in my 30s, I was like, I like getting older. And I had a good friend who was at that time in his 50s. He goes, Jill, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I was like, I feel good. I like getting a little bit older. He's like, just wait. He was so right. He was so right. Getting older sucks. It's like always something. That's what it feels like. All right. So you guys hit me up with your questions. If you have questions, let me know. I have here hold on a second. So we just got the new update of all the latest IC research studies, and I thought it'd be really interesting to go through these. So I have 8 new IC studies. The challenge with some of these studies is that they're animal studies and what they do is they deliberately damage the bladders of mice and then try to fix it. And it's like, guys, please. It's just, that's why I gave up pharmacology. I love animals. I don't believe in doing studies like that. Plus, a mouse bladder is very different than a human bladder. So anyway, our first paper here is from China, and believe it or not, they were studying Elmeron in damaged bladders, seeing if it would change their gut microbiota. Oh, let's see if there is anything there. I just think it's pointless at this point in time. All right, the second one, the role of gynecologic findings in IC, a consensus statement. Let's see what this has to say. So this was part of the March meeting of this international consensus meeting. So what they said, a number of associated gynecological disorders may overlap with IC. Our consensus committee identified 5 main comorbid disorders, including endometriosis, genitopelvic pain, penetration disorder. Well, I'm also known as sexual dysfunction. That's interesting. Genitopelvic pain, penetration disorder. We normally call that vaginismus. Okay. Overactive pelvic floor muscles, hormone-associated genitourinary changes, hello, estrogen atrophy, and vulvodynia. Okay, no biggie. Oh, here we go. Here's a study on stress and inflammation in IC. Let's look at this here real quick. IC is a chronic inflammatory disease of the urinary bladder. Recent research has highlighted chronic inflammation or oxidative stress resulting from either increased production of reaction oxygen. The frequent co-occurrence of IC with other chronic diseases characterized by prolonged oxidative stress and subtle chronic inflammation, such as autoimmune diseases, chronic psychological stress, fibromyalgia, and IBS, suggests a common underlying pathogenic pathway. In this view, we summarize findings suggesting that oxidative stress and chronic inflammation play a part in the onset and progression of IC. Well, doesn't that dovetail nicely with our discussion of drinking a lot of diet soda or coffee, which would certainly cause chronic inflammation over time? We explore how oxidative stress contributes to IC through various mechanisms, including damage to bladder urothelial cells and mitochondria. And they talk about therapies. Interesting. Oh, and that's a free article. Okay, let's see where this is from. Hold on. It looks like it's Eastern Europe. And I do not see. Oh, it'd be really nice to know where the authors are from. Okay, it's forcing me to download an article. Let's just take a look at that real quick. We really haven't seen a lot of discussion about mitochondrial dysfunction in IC. That's very interesting. Chronic inflammation of the bladder, urothelial cells. Wow, this is a good article. Okay, so targeting inflammation and oxidative stress. Interesting. Low energy shockwave therapy is a non-invasive treatment demonstrated to induce tissue regeneration. We have slowly seen that come in. Next one is platelet-rich plasma. We've talked about that before. Oh, another one, NAC, N-acetylcysteine. Seeing a lot of attention to N-acetylcysteine. Melatonin, flavonoids, taurine. Conclusion, IC is a chronic inflammatory condition marked by pelvic pain, urgency, frequency, and the absence of infection. A central feature of IC pathology is oxidative stress, which results from this imbalance fuels chronic inflammation, leading to sustained tissue damage, sensory nerve activation, and pain, hallmarks of the disease. Though no definitive treatments currently exist, understanding the molecular mechanisms, yada, 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 yada. Wow, what a good article. Okay, that, my friends, is a very, very good article. From Slovenia. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Hold on, I gotta look, see? I know when I get all geeky like this, you guys, it's not that appealing. Kayleen says, do periods cause frequency? It was literally every hour this past week. It can. People normally flare a couple of days before their period and then maybe for a day or two of their period, but we're all different. And girl, remember, you've got endo, and that's always going to make it a little bit more complex. Liz says, after talking with you briefly, you completely opened my eyes to phenotyping. How can I talk further with you? Just call. You can just call, my friend. First come, first serve. But I'm happy to talk to anybody, and it's free, it's fine. But if you want to spend a lot of time, like an hour, then I might ask you to sign up for a coaching session. I normally end those discussions with, if you found this helpful, please think about making a donation to the IC Network or becoming a member, things like that. But yeah, honey, just call. icnetwork.org. We have an 800 number. It's right at the top of the page. You can certainly just go there. I am answering the phone a lot more because I lost one of my staffers. So people are surprised when I answer the phone, but believe it or not, I answer the phone every day. We're a small operation here. I do not have a secretary. All right. Hold on one sec. And let me just, I lost my thingy. Where did it go? Nope, that's not it. Okay, let's just see if there's anything else that's interesting here. Comparative risk of developing IC with childhood GI, urologic, autoimmune, or psychiatric disorders. Well, we know, guys, we know what this is. This is the widespread pain, adverse childhood event. Okay, this is nothing new. We already know this. Anything else? Another article on phenotyping. We already talked about that. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Not a lot. Kayleen says, I'm 80% sure some endo is back. I'm scared that the new IUD next month won't stop these heavy periods. Honey, don't catastrophize. Take some deep breaths. If you have to give your brain a direction. If you assume everything's going to go bad, the odds are you're going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so instead of saying it's not going to work, it's not going to work, what I want you to say is, you know what? I was successful. I'm getting a new IUD. Yay, good. This is good. It's going to help tremendously. Change how you're thinking about this, okay? There's no reason for you to catastrophize and to assume that things won't work. The IUD worked for you before. It should work for you again. You are living proof that it worked for you. Liz says, thank you, Jill. I'm a member and I was calling for help and you answered. It was a miracle in my eyes. You'll call. Good. Happy. Really happy to do it. All right, you guys on Facebook, you're very quiet. You're being very, very quiet. If you have questions, pop them my way. Listen, in honor of Dr. Weiss, why don't we share some highlights? And I just want to, let me just share some of the things in here that I think are phenomenal. What he did it's phenomenal. Number one, so this is in Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain. So remember, we just lost this author. He just died at 89. We don't know if we're going to get this book again. It's the best book that I believe has been written. One of the things that he did really well in this book are with the diagrams. And I think the diagram that is incredibly helpful is this one. So look, here's your spinal, your back, your spine, right? Here's your sacrum, here's your hip bone. These are the nerves that come out of the sacrum, the pudendal nerve. So you've got holes in your sacrum. A nerve comes out of each one of them. But you can see, look, do you see how these nerves are going in and out of these muscles? So if these muscles get jacked up and tight, what are they going to do? They're going to squeeze the nerve. And he believes that many more patients than we realize have pelvic pain and bladder pain that is being driven by tight muscles. I was working, oh God, I mean, it's just amazing the patients that I talk with. And this was a very, very busy week, but one of the patients that I was working with on Friday when she was young, she was a gymnast, she was an ice skater, and then something else. And I asked her, and when we were doing her phenotyping, she was really strongly presented as a pelvic floor patient. And I went, all right, girl, how many times have you fallen on your tailbone? She goes, way too many. And I'm like, have you ever heard about pelvic floor dysfunction and nerve compression? If you have pain when you sit down, that gets better when it stands up. Well, that tells us that we've got some muscle squeezing nerves, perhaps. Sue says, I had what I thought was a flare and ended up having so much pelvic pain and urinary tract pain and bladder pain. You ended up in the ER yesterday. The doctor found blood and white blood cells in my urine. Instead, I had an infection and put me on my choice of medication, which is cephalexin, and sent you on your way. Well, the culture came back negative, but full of blood, full of white blood cells. I started on my med and I'm already feeling a little bit better. My urine isn't cloudy anymore. I'm just wondering why that is, why there was no bacteria. So this relates to how the bladder defends itself. So let me see if here, I've got a little postcard that'll help. Hold on. Okay. So this is one of the old educational postcards for Elmeron. But it does a really good job of showing you a cross view of the bladder wall. So here is the urothelium. Here is the gag layer, this blue gag layer. And obviously it's not blue, that's just to make it easier for us to understand it. So urine up here, the gag layer pushes the bacteria and urine away from the cells, right? And then underneath the cells, look at this, we've got blood vessels and nerves. Okay. So what happens when we lose gag? So when we lose gag, urine now reaches the urothelial cells. Bacteria now reach the urine, these cells. But let's just talk about urine for a moment. Remember, urine contains ammonia and urea and all sorts of irritants. That's exactly why we have a gag layer, to protect the tissue, because they would be, I mean, if you had raw ammonia on your hand, it would burn, right? So we've got this, the bladder has to have a very strong, robust self-defense system to protect itself from toxins in your urine. Okay, but again, let's just say that maybe you're older, maybe you're on birth control, maybe you're on Lupron for estrogen suppression. Okay, so now urine and ammonia is getting down here. Now these cells are not passive cells. The amazing thing about these cells is that they communicate with your immune system and they go, help me, help me, help me, there's an invader. They let the immune system know through a fairly complex pathway that there is an invader and something is invading here. So now the immune system responds and sends white blood cells to the area, because your white blood cells are your army. The white blood cells swarm the area to look for any bacteria, to kill the bacteria. So the white blood cells come right through the blood vessels. So the white blood cells get staged here. But how do they get out of the blood vessel and into the cells? That's the question. And the answer is the capillary opens. It just opens. It just opens and releases them into the wild to go hunt, search, and destroy for infection. So when that blood vessel opens, it releases red blood cells and it releases white blood cells. And this is why so many of us have had microscopic blood in our urine. That's not related to an infection. That's just a damaged bladder's way of asking for help. So you had elevated red and elevated blood cells and elevated white blood cells, but they didn't find infection. That's what we would associate now as a bladder wall flare. That the odds are there really isn't infection. The odds are that we're dealing with a superficial irritation of the bladder wall. Now, of course, the reason why you feel better on antibiotics is antibiotics have a nice anti-inflammatory effect. If it were a raging infection, you would have you would see blood in your urine. You would be peeing pink. You would be peeing red. You would be having blood clot. But that the microscopic, we really associate a little bit more with flares than we do with infection. What I don't understand with what you said here is that the culture came back negative, but full of white blood cells and full of blood. And so I'm assuming red blood cells. If they continue to find high levels of blood, we want to get that checked out. Because blood in your urine is not normal. If you are seeing, I mean, a lot of blood, it implies maybe you have a kidney stone. Maybe something else is happening that is making a portion of your urinary tract bleed. And sometimes blood in the urine is suggestive of bladder cancer. So if you were a smoker, smoking is the #1 cause of bladder cancer. So that history of smoking and a lot of blood in your urine has opened a door that we want to close. It's opened a door that we need to close correctly. And that means that your doctor should go, well, okay, we see a little bit of blood in here. Let's do a urine cytology test, simple urine test that looks for cancer markers. And they've probably already done that anyway, but you could certainly ask for that. There is no connection between IC and bladder cancer. It is of the millions and millions of patients who have been diagnosed with IC, we simply do not see high rates of bladder cancer at all. The biggest risk factor really is just, were you a smoker? If you were, then it's reasonable to get a checked out. I wouldn't worry about it at all. I just do your due diligence and say, okay, doc, is this a reasonable result? If you think this is high, do you want to do any additional testing? Or you want to wait and see? Now, another really easy way to rule out an infection is with a urine test strip. A urine test strip, which I have up here. Let me see. Sorry, I'm super casual today, guys. Just bear with me. Here we go. Another way that you could check for UTI is with a dipstick test. So a dipstick, so this is the AZO UTI test. And basically, it's a strip that you pee on. So you can see this one. This is an old test that is completely invalid because it's been exposed to air for a couple of years now, but it does a good job of showing you that there are different pads. So generally you pee on the stick and then you set it aside for 5 or 10 minutes and you come back and look at it. And then this is the results. So the top pad tests for leukocytes, white blood cells. The bottom pad tests for nitrite. So if you have a double positive, if both pads turn this color, you have infection. because nitrites are only produced by pathogenic bacteria. But if the nitrite stays negative, but you are over here with the leukocytes, that doesn't necessarily mean you have infection. We see this actually with bladder wall flares, but these tests are not infallible. It would be interesting. You could potentially wait a day or two, retest it again. You can see if you start having a positive down here, or you can just call your doctor and say, hey, I think I might have a urinary tract infection. I did a dipstick test. I was really high in leukocytes. You could take a picture of it, send it to your doctor and say, hey, did you do a culture? Let's just make sure. Sue says she's not a smoker. They did a cytology. Excellent. But there was so much azo in it that they couldn't. I did a test strip and it was a double positive. That's right. Okay. There you go, girl. You had a double positive. You did exactly the right thing. You went in. Now, the thing about cultures, think about the word culture. Culture means grow. So there is a fundamental flaw with a urine culture, and that is it will only grow the food, the bacteria that eat the food they used. It's a culture medium. And so if you happen to have an infection that is a rare infection that does not eat the classic formula, it's not going to grow it out. And that's exactly why instead we're all moving slowly but steadily towards next generation DNA urine testing, because next generation DNA urine testing doesn't require any growing. It just basically it spins your urine violently. It breaks everything up into its pieces. And then they go in and they harvest the DNA and they identify what's in your urine based upon the DNA profile. And so that's a much more accurate way of seeing if you have a pathogen. Sue says, now what? You stop the meds? No, girl, I wouldn't stop the meds at all. I think you're going to have to see what your doctor has to say. I mean, they prescribed an antibiotic for you. You had a double positive dipstick test. You said your urine was full of blood. Those are all signs that you have an infection. And yeah, the culture didn't find anything. But again, that might be a more unusual infection. I think you have to have a conversation with your doctor to figure out what to do. Lisa says, my urogyno told me that my urine test would always test positive for estrace, leukocytes, and blood, even if it grew nothing. So I don't know how one is supposed to know. I had one earlier this month and it went septic. Yeah, girl, how are you doing? By the way, Lisa, how are you? I have always had microscopic blood in my urine. I've never not, my entire life. And yet, if you looked at my bladder, there is nothing physically wrong with my bladder. And I don't know, there's so much about the human body we don't know. And like how the bladder performs certain functions. What food nourishes the cells of the bladder wall? I'm assuming that that's a good bacteria, but there's just so much what we call basic bladder science that we still don't quite understand. And we may never understand it. I mean, listen, the human body is amazing. It is wired to repair itself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for man to arrogantly think that they can make something better than the human body is just absolutely absurd. So there might be a reason why we tend to have a little bit more microscopic blood in our urine. I don't know. Maybe it's part of, in the vagina, for example, a lot of people don't know that the vagina is like literally one of the cleanest parts of the human body. And the reason why is because it sloughs off the cells every 4 hours, either 4 hours or 6 hours. But the vagina is completely self-maintaining and it's considered incredibly clean. But as it sloughs off the cells, is it going to allow for more microscopic blood to be in the vagina? Maybe something similar is happening in the bladder like that. We don't know. Anne says, is there a pill to take to see if you're leaking urine in your underwear? Yeah, you could just do an azo bladder pain relief tablet, which turns your urine orange. I mean, you could probably do that for a day and check that way. Or you can wear a mini pad and then just touch the mini pad and see if the mini pad's a little moist, or you can smell the mini pad and see if you smell any urine. Thank you, Sue. Honey, you're welcome. You know, it's never my place to get between you and your doctors, nor is it my place to give you medical advice. My job is to open your eyes to maybe look at it in a slightly different way and then send you back to the doctor with a new set of questions. Anybody online who tries to give you medical advice, you should ignore. Only your doctor can give you medical advice. My goal is to educate you, to get you to ask different questions of your doctor. Judy says, what is oxidative stress? It's just, okay, oxidation. Let's see. Oh, you're sending me back to college. Think about, okay, I want to get this right. I actually have a really good example in my brain, but hold on. Let me make sure I'm going to get this right. Okay. So, okay, I was right. So when you go to buy meat, you buy ideally red meat. I mean, something that looks fresh and healthy. So if you're buying beef, it's going to be red. If you're buying pork, it's going to be pink. If you're going to buy chicken, it's certainly going to be quite pink. But if meat is exposed to oxygen, if it's been sitting for a while and it starts to spoil, it starts to turn brown. That is oxidative stress. So, oxidation in meat refers to a chemical process where compounds in meat react with oxygen, leading to undesirable changes in color, flavor, and texture. This process, particularly lipid oxidation, is a major factor in the deterioration of cells. So, I think a way of thinking about this is if you had a wound on your hand and you poured out, so let's just say you fell and you skinned the palm of your hand, road rash. So that certainly is a physically stressful trauma to the tissue. The tissue is injured. And as irritants get into that road rash, bad things start to happen. It stings, it burns. But what would happen over the long term if you poured acid on a wound every single day? Would it heal? Mm-mm. Because it's being injured every day. And so, what that's talking about is the role of stress over time. And getting back to that paper about, is coffee and soda linked to the development of lower urinary tract symptoms? The answer is yeah, that's creating a chemical stress of the tissue that is persistent and creating more and more damage over time. I think that that's a really good way of thinking about this. Yeah, I think that that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I do. Think about chemotherapy, for example. If for anybody who's gone through some forms of chemo, the chemicals are so harsh that patients can have extreme reactions in their bladder, severe frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. I can still remember a young man called, I think he was in his 20s, who had a rare cancer and he'd been going through chemo and his bladder was just killing him. And he kept talking to his oncologist and saying, "My bladder is terrible. Please help me." And this oncologist said, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine." But there's actually a medication called Mesnex that reduces that bladder wall damage. The oncologist was just too lazy to prescribe it or just didn't understand how severe it was. So the bladder, like any other part of the body, can be injured. And generally, it's injured through toxic chemical exposure. So we're going to see that with some forms of chemo. We're going to see that with ketamine. We're going to see that with prolonged use of coffee and soda, especially diet sodas, artificial sugars, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I think that the trend now, I mean, honestly, and this is what I'm trying to do now, is it is an undeniable fact that the food that we've been eating for the last 50 years has, in many cases, been very harmful. From high sugar levels to high seed oils to high other fats um, and caffeine, we had been playing Russian roulette with the human body. And, it still stuns me to go out and see the just massive obesity in our community right now. Just the obesity out there is just shocking to me to see young children who are very, very heavy and older people who basically have a life that's massively limited because they fell victim to foods that were designed to become addictive. I mean, so there's a reason why sugar is in ketchup. There's a reason why they made Happy Meals for children. That was not for the health of children. It was to get children addicted to French fries, that hot, sugary gooiness that will trigger addiction and get that child to be a lifelong customer of French fries and hamburgers. And so the trend now is to get back to single ingredient foods. Think about what were your ancestors eating just 100 years ago? They weren't eating Hamburger Helper. They literally bought the meat, they bought the onion, they bought the veg, they cooked it together. Healthy, fresh meal. No preservatives, no sugar. And if you go back and you look at newsreels from the 50s and the 60s, virtually no obesity. The obesity kicked in the late 60s, 70s, when fast food was driving so much of it. And so, and I have normally been very tall and thin for the most part. I'm 5'9". My ideal weight's 135. If I can be between 135 and 140, I'm happy. So I do not like carrying weight on my stomach at all. Menopause is hell for this because now I have a stomach I never had before and I don't like it. And throw in eating a lot of, my body has been so jacked up the last 2 years. Number one, I had my gallbladder removed, so I cannot eat fat. I cannot eat any saturated fat. I'm like, if I eat saturated fat, I am in the bathroom for 2 hours. An egg yolk, I will be in the bathroom for 2 hours. So I can't eat that. And then the whole cancer thing was just incredibly traumatic. I never identified myself as a stress eater. I am definitely a stress eater. And my stress food of choice is a cinnamon roll. And let me tell you, in the last 10 months, well, I mean, up to I stopped like 2 months ago. I was eating a lot of baked goods, and I now have love handles that I do not like. And so I am back to simple, fresh, healthy food. The challenge is when you go with simple, fresh, healthy food, it's amazing how it changes everything because your bowels start working. Like, I haven't been constipated in quite a while. Things move quite nicely. Um, um, so anyway, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that I think we've been sabotaged by the food industry, and our refuge is to go back to real food. Lisa, having trouble typing in chat. You're still in the hospital till tomorrow. Hey, you're getting out tomorrow. Good job. Yesterday and today I was very crampy and had spasms. Now my urine is red with clots in it. Ugh, stressed a little, won't lie. Okay, so honey, I mean, hopefully the nurses have seen that and hopefully they are acting on that. When did the clots start again? So Lisa was in our meeting last week. She's been in the hospital for like 3 weeks now, and has had almost became septic with a really bad infection. Right? Did I get that right? So now, unfortunately, your urine has clots in it again. God dang it. Well, let's see what the testing finds. Let's just see what I mean, because I mean, there's always a chance that I mean, you still have do you have a suprapubic catheter, right? So there's always a chance that we're dealing with a little bit of tissue irritation, um, especially if they changed the catheter in the last 24 hours. Did they do that? Judy said, once in a while, I will have a small cup of low acid coffee with a scoop of pre-leaf. Would this be okay if it's not every day? I didn't have any coffee for years until recently. I think so. I mean, if you have Hunner's lesions, I think that you need to protect your bladder until the lesions are healed. But if you don't have Hunner's lesions, if you're pelvic floor driven, I would consider that viable. If you have estrogen atrophy, I would not do it very frequently. I would make it a very, very special treat instead. And if you have widespread pain, if you're in that widespread pain phenotype, the caffeine is just going to jack up your nervous system. And so I would be doing a decaf. So if you really want to do, if you are determined to have coffee with a sensitive bladder, then go with a genuine low acid coffee. Coffee acidity is determined by three things. It's determined by the altitude that the bean is grown at. The lower the altitude, the lower the acid. The higher the altitude, the higher the acid. So when people have low acid coffee, they're different beans. They taste the same, but they're different beans. The second way that acidity is determined is by how it's roasted. If it's roasted in a hot bin, it's going to be more acidic because the hot metal triggers the development of an acid in the coffee bean. If it's roasted in an air popper, that does not happen. So air roasted coffee beans are lower in acid. And then the last way that acidity is determined is by how you brew it. So if you brew it in a hot brew, the heat extracts more acid. If you do a cold brew, it's much less acidic. So the lowest cup of coffee you can do is a low acid bean, that's air roasted, and cold brewed. We have a couple of coffee brands in the IC Network shop. The coffee that has the lowest level of chlorogenic acid, it's the chlorogenic acid that's the worst part of the acid in coffee. It's called Bella Rosa coffee. And that was tested at University of California, Davis. I've got the research to back that up. So Bella Rosa coffee. And when they started that coffee company, they just created this new innovative air roaster that just minimized the acid even more. And so we have decaf, we have half calf, and we have regular in the IC Network shop. The purpose of the half calf is to try to reduce the caffeine level or to help you get yourself off of caffeine, because going off of caffeine right away can trigger some pretty bad headaches. So switching over to half calf for a couple of weeks and then bringing yourself down to decaf would be great. And again, I consider this really important in patients who are in the widespread pain central nervous system group. We just have to stop poking the nervous system so much. Judy is drinking decaf. Okay, it's decaf, but is it a low acid variety? Nicole said, "Hi, Jill. I'm going on a cruise in 6 days. A little nervous to be away. I have packed Azo test strips, pre-leaf, Peora, and portable heating pads. Do I have any other suggestions? How about some Azo bladder pain relief tablets just in case you flare?" Nicole, I gotta tell you, you know what I watched on TV on Netflix last night? I watched the documentary on that. Judy, you're using the Bella Rosa. Good, that's great. I watched the documentary on that cruise ship that lost power and the toilet stopped working. And now they fixed that. I mean, now that they've literally fixed that trend. I mean, that was in 2013, and so that's all resolved. So you don't have to worry about the toilets turning off. But it's ironic that you asked about cruising, because that was one stinky documentary. Because people had to pee in showers. They had to poop in red bags. And then when the tugs arrived to get it back to port, they pushed the ship to the side, which tilted the showers, which meant all the urine drained out of the showers into the carpet. And anyway, it must have been quite an experience. And again, I'm sorry, listen, they fixed it. At the end of the documentary, they talk very specifically about those, the electrical system is not connected now to the toilets. Okay. This was a once in a lifetime thing, but it was quite entertaining. The poop cruise. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the poop cruise. So okay, this is what I do when I travel. Number one, because I am pelvic floor driven, I always bring a muscle relaxant, Flexeril or Baclofen. I know for me, the hardest part of traveling is just getting to the damn airport, because it's a 2-hour bus ride from where I live to San Francisco International. And that bouncing of the bus has almost always triggered pelvic floor spasms. So I pre-medicate with Flexeril before I go. About an hour before I go, I will take a quarter of a Flexeril. I don't take more than that because Flexeril is sedating, but I will do a quarter of a Flexeril every 2 hours for the duration of the trip, so that I can keep my pelvic floor muscles fairly calm. I will also do that with pain medicine. I always bring pain medicine if I can. Hi, Kathleen. Oh, that's a great idea. Kathleen says, if I can make a suggestion about traveling, bring a water bottle at all times. You mean a water bottle to drink, or a peri bottle to rinse yourself off with? Okay, so for the duration of the trip, I will do a quarter of a Norco every 2 hours also to stay ahead of that pain. And this is controversial. Number one, a lot of people don't have access to Norco. I've just had a lot of surgeries. I've had a lot of surgeries in the last 7 or 8 years. And so I have my little stockpile. Not big, it's little. But this is exactly the time where I would use it. Um, and my rule is, if you ever have to have a dental implant or a root canal or something like that, don't turn down the pain meds. I don't give you a lot, maybe just 5 pills, but just to be able to have a little see, and I could get in trouble for saying this, and I don't want to get in trouble. I just think that there are moments in time where pelvic pain can be very, very severe. And there are moments in time when an opiate medication is reasonable, and our AUA guidelines say that. Our American Urology Association guidelines for IC, they want pelvic pain assessed at every appointment. They want it treated compassionately and multimodally. They are not against the use of opioids at all. Okay? So that's what I do when I travel. I have had some pretty rough flares on planes. I flew to London in a flare, and that's what I did every 2 hours. And I will say that when we were over the Atlantic Ocean, I was not in a happy place. And I brought a microwave heating pad, thinking that they could heat it up in their microwave. I didn't know that planes don't have microwaves. And I like walked up to the flight attendant with my little thingy and said, "Could you please help me?" And she goes, "We're sorry, we don't have that on planes." But what she did is she put some really hot washcloths in a plastic bag and wrapped it in a towel, and that's what I used as my heating pad on the flight over. I would be, Nicole. I know that it's going to be a lot of food on the trip. Um, it's going to be tempting to maybe try some risk foods. I would just tell you to be more moderate in your choices. Not the time to splurge on having champagne every night. You know, mix it up. Sparkling water with a a non-irritating icy spritz would be reasonable. I just don't want you to listen. It's great you're going on a cruise. It's great that you're going to have a vacation. You deserve this vacation. Don't sabotage it. So just make good food choices. Okay, not the time to eat really spicy salsa. Just bring it back, be a little bit more conservative, and focus instead on doing the fun things. Just do the fun things. Also, I would definitely be bringing Clorox wipes and a lot of hand wipes and Clorox wipes, so that when you check in, you can wipe down everything. Um, just to reduce the bacterial count, because as we know, cruise ships can sometimes concentrate bacteria. Anne says, dental hygienist here, just had an implant. Doctors don't give pain meds. Haha, just Motrin and Tylenol. Mine do. And mine do. I had 2 implants last year. My oral surgeon absolutely gave me pain meds. In fact, I turned him down, and as I was driving home, uh, it just started throbbing, and I called him when I got home and said, "I'm going to take you up on this pain meds," and I needed it. Lisa says she's now on baclofen and some oxy, but not sure what I will go home with. Okay. Anne says, "Really? You're in New Jersey?" Yeah, I'm in California. But see, the other thing too is, like, I like totally know how to use pain meds. Like, the number one mistake that patients make if you're given an opioid medicine is to double or triple your dose, to wake up, "Oh my God, it's a really bad flare. I better take 2." That's a catastrophic mistake. You have to understand that opioid medicines act at the spinal cord. And there's a finite number of nerves at the spinal cord that it turns off. And so if a half a pill will turn off all those nerves, there's no reason to take a whole pill or 2 pills. I know for me, the first time I took a Vicodin back when I went, my IC started in 1992. And I and I was in agony for a year. I mean, I'm not lying. It was rough. I would drive to work crying. I would be crying in the middle of the night. I would be peeing so much. I didn't flush the toilet because I didn't want to wake people up. You know, you just I would be laying on my living room floor in the fetal position, begging God to help me with this pain. And it never even dawned on me to ask for pain medicine. Honestly, and I'm a pharmacologist for God's sake. Didn't dawn on me that a pain med would reduce these symptoms, because to me, it felt like it was a really, really bad bladder infection. And so I ended up in the emergency room 3 days in a row. You know, I um, uh, was despondent, and I just thought, "I just need to get away." You know, when you're just crazy in pain, you're just not logical. And I just thought, maybe I just need to get away. So my mother and I took a train trip up to Lake Tahoe. You know, certainly a train trip's not going to hurt a bladder disease. Of course, a train trip is devastating to pelvic floor injuries, which is actually what I had. And so we got up to Lake Tahoe and then rented a car and drove down to South Shore. And that night, I ended up in the ER just bawling my eyes out. It was horrific. Um, and they gave me a shot, and it turned all of my symptoms off. And I went, wait a second, you can turn this off? My mind was blown. And my mother, my elderly mother back then, well, let's see, she would have probably been 70 at the time, who had vowed never to drive on a freeway again, drove me home in the rental car from South Shore with me writhing in the back seat crying. But they'd given me a couple of, like 2 or 3 uh, pain pills to take, which I did. We got home, ended up at the ER again the next day, ended up at the ER again day after that. And it took 3 visits in a row for my urologist to go, "Oh, this has gotten really bad for you, huh?" And I'm like, "You think?" I mean, I was having very, very dark thoughts. And finally, he said, "Okay, let's try some pain meds." So he gave me a prescription for Vicodin. Well, I took 1 pill and I was immediately nauseous and dizzy. Now, some people would say, "Oh, you must have an allergy," but this is where my training worked, and it's like, no, that probably just meant it was too much meds. So, as Sue said, well, I cut it in half, and the next day I tried a half a pill, and you know what? It worked. I wasn't nauseous, I wasn't dizzy, and it actually turned off the pain. And then I cut it into quarters. And you know what? A quarter of a pill turned off all of my pain. And that then became my protocol. Is I would now this was back when we all had more access to opiate meds. Is once that severe pain kicked in, not the little mild pain, I'm talking the severe, real severe pain, I gave myself permission to take a quarter of a Vicodin, and then I waited an hour. Like, you can't make any other decision, you just sit and wait for an hour. Have my heating pad. And I'm telling you honestly, probably 98% of the time, a quarter of a pill turned off the flare. A couple of times at that 2 hour or at that hour mark, I would take the next quarter. And I could count on one hand how many times I had to do that. And that was a really good lesson for me in how opiates work and how important it is to catch pain early, because fighting pain is like fighting a fire. You don't let the pain go out of control. It's like if you have a fire in a little trash can next to your desk, you pour a glass of water in it down and over. If you let that fire build up until the drapes catch on fire and then the wall catches on fire and then the house catches on fire, glass of water isn't going to do anything. You got a big problem here. And fighting a flare and fighting pain is exactly the same way. We can nip that flare in the bud early. If we can nip that pain when it's very, very early, it's going to take far less medication to turn it off. But if you let that pain get out of control, you're screwing yourself. And there are some patients out there who say, well, I don't want to take any pills. And they're the ones who suffer the most because they let their entire central nervous system get jacked up. And by the time they're ready to take pain meds, they're going to have to take a lot of it to turn it off because it is built up massively. Sue says, yes, exactly. Nicole says she just drinks milk and water. I think you could do sparkling water. I said, Nicole, I would be a little bit more concerned about buffet style eating. Like for example, I would get salad dressing on the side. Rather than letting them put a lot of stuff on it. I think you need to be a little bit more assertive about what you're putting on your plate when you're on that cruise. So ask them for salad dressing on the side. And if it looks okay, you can do a little bit, just a little bit. We have a lot of recipes for salad dressing in the IC Chef Cookbook, which is our kind of our master book on the IC diet. Although I'm working on another one right now. I was always fine with ranch dressing and blue cheese dressing and oil. They have infused olive oils. We used to sell them. Fortunately, the company stopped making it. Like a basil infused olive oil on a green salad is wonderful. But you just don't know what's coming out of a can and what's heavily preserved and salted. So I think I would just want things like salad dressings on the side. I would be really careful with gravies, things like that. Get that on the side too. And just what can you do? I mean, a perfect meal on a cruise would be something like filet of sole almondine on rice, a chicken, pasta carbonara, which is not tomato sauce. It's more of a Italian cheese pesto thing. Pesto pasta would probably be okay. I would also ask if anything is treated with sulfites. Be really, really clear with them. Do they put any preservatives on the fruit or on the salad fixing? Because that could potentially trigger some discomfort. Hi, Carrie. Mary makes a good point. When you're doing a quarter of a Norco instead of one Norco, it's going to be really hard for anybody to say you're abusing meds. I mean, I have done that off and on for 30 years. I can make a prescription for Norco last 2 years because I only take a quarter of a pill when I need it. So nobody can ever accuse me of being a drug abuser. A addict takes pain medicine to escape life and escape their responsibility. The responsible use of pain medicine is if you're using it so that you can function and do the things you need to do. So, other patients will say, well, I don't want to become an addict. And it's like, well, are you trying to make a meal? Are you trying to be able to walk to go to the doctor? Then that's an appropriate use. So tiny amount. But again, you always talk to your doctor about that. You can read the AUA guidelines about that. Okay. Carrie says, I may have missed the conversation. Can you tell the benefits of lactoferrin? Yeah. So the lactoferrin IC study came out almost a year ago. It came out last July. and or no, last August actually. Um, Lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum. Colostrum, of course, is the most important part of mother's milk because it's colostrum just it helps to build a newborn baby's immune system. So lactoferrin is a protein that plays a critical role. It's considered a frontline defense in our immune system. Our bodies right now make lactoferrin as adults. We have lactoferrin in our tears, we have lactoferrin in our vaginal fluid. Lactoferrin is a very active, plays an active, dominant role in the human body and again in our immune system. Apparently, though, sometimes lactoferrin levels drop as we get older. I haven't gotten clear insight into exactly why that happens and how that happens, but in my reading of it, that was brought up a couple of times that perhaps lactoferrin levels begin to diminish as we get a little bit older. So researchers have been studying the use of lactoferrin in a variety of adult conditions for the last 20 years or so with pretty good success overall. So 3 years ago, a team in Italy studied lactoferrin with recurring UTI. Now, it's important to understand that lactoferrin has a natural antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal effect. Lacto means from milk, ferrin means iron. Lactoferrin's method of action is it makes it difficult for pathogenic infections to use iron to grow. It's interesting. It doesn't limit our ability to process iron in the human body. It just somehow takes it away from pathogenic infections. So anyway, 3 years ago, this Italian university team decided to see if lactoferrin would help prevent recurring UTIs. And it did. It did. And they published that study. And then 2 years later, they released their lactoferrin IC study last summer, and it was stunningly successful. Now, it was a small study. It was not a double-blinded study, but it was a very powerful study. It was 31 patients, all with history of flares. They basically took it for anywhere from 4 to 6 months, somewhere in there. At the end, what they did is they did cystoscopies before and after treatment. So they looked at all their bladders before and then afterwards. And they also measured systemic inflammatory markers. They did blood testing to test the level of inflammation in their body. At the end of its use, red inflamed bladders had become pink and healthy. Hunner's lesions have virtually disappeared. The direct quote out of the study is almost completely gone. And systemic inflammation had improved dramatically. So 28 out of 31 had no flares after lactoferrin treatment. The other 3 had 1 flare after lactoferrin treatment. So we have never had any treatment that I'm aware of that has shown red inflamed bladders becoming pink and healthy again. And there was only one other study with Hunner's lesions, and I don't even remember the name of it. What was it called? It's not available. And so this is the only supplement, OTC supplement, or I can't say oral med because cyclosporin has been shown to help. But at the supplement level, we've never had anything show this level of success with few, if any, side effects. There were no side effects reported in the IC study at all. And so I got very excited with that. Now, some people would say, yeah, you need more research before you talk about it. And I am not, I'm wired very, very differently. because I know right now there are patients in agony and suffering. And if there is a remote chance that a simple over the counter supplement with an outstanding safety profile could help reduce that suffering, I think it's important to let those patients know that, look, it's not a guess, it's not a random cheap fly by night company saying, hey, let's take advantage of patients and sell them something. This is grounded in many studies over the years that have proven success in a variety of conditions with an outstanding safety profile. I mean, it literally comes from cow's milk. And so that's why I did the story that I did about it, which then circulated throughout the entire internet. And now we have lots and lots of patients who are on it. I use it myself. I'm not consistent with it because there's actually lactoferrin cancer research, and I'm a breast cancer patient. So it's like, okay, what do I have to lose here? I had a couple of patients call last week who reordered it, who said that they're definitely doing much better and they like the progress they're making. We had a couple of patients who say that it gave them stomach upset and diarrhea, and they've chosen not to do it. It is an option supported by a good study. Is it a large study? No. But it's a good study, in my opinion. And it's kind of one of those situations where, I mean, if you go to the front page of the IC Network website, I've got a blog on it. I've got an article on it. I've got all the research. You can go look at those research studies yourself and make the decision yourself and see if this is something that you think might be worth trying. And especially now that the only oral medication approved for IC Elmeron is now linked to blindness, you know, it's like, come on. Why don't we try the one that is considered very, very safe before we do the one that might make me blind for the rest of my life? And our AUA guidelines in our 2014, they wanted patients to do the easy meds, the less risky therapies before going to the more risky therapies. And so the AUA guidelines said early on, it's okay to try the supplements before you try the more aggressive therapies, because this is about minimizing risk. And I think, you know, now that we have so much more information now about the risks of eye damage, it's like, okay, to me, I think supplements have a very solid place in the IC treatment protocol, but it depends entirely on your phenotype. I mean, listen, if you're pelvic floor driven, then you're not going to do a chondroitin supplement. You might do the PEA because that can help calm nerves down. But if you've got estrogen atrophy and we got a vulnerable bladder wall, then the chondroitin-based supplements are a good experiment. And if you have a lot of inflammation in your bladder and or Hunner's lesions, the lactoferrin is a viable thing to consider. But you need to read the research and see what you think about that. And again, it's all laid out on our website. I've got, just go to the front page of IC Network, icnetwork.org. You will see, if you scroll down, you will see a blog on lactoferrin. You cannot miss it. I've got links to all the studies and papers that you can read, etc. But to me, it's about, I mean, I just operate from a personal understanding of the suffering that can happen. All right, we got some stuff happening over here on YouTube. Okay, it's the burning sensation that occurs after urination, specifically the burning sensation at the opening of the penis, a symptom of the prostate. It could be, but it's generally more considered referred pain from the pelvic floor. Nicole says, redheads are very sensitive and I always cut my meds in half. Works like a charm. Girl, exactly. Except I do quarters. Okay, I have suffered a lot for 2.5 years. There are no bacteria. I also have burning sensation after urinating at the opening of the penis. I have irritation from the acids. Is this a symptom of the prostate? Not usually. It can be more a symptom of the pelvic floor. Very, very tight pelvic floor muscles that have squeezed blood vessels so dramatically you are now in a state of pelvic ischemia or ischemia. That's basically oxygen deprivation of the tissues because you just don't have enough blood supply to the bladder. Now, the prostate is funky. You know, the prostate can be playing a role too, but that pain after urination we really more strongly associate with the pelvic floor. With the prostate pain, and I've worked with so many guys just recently in the last couple of months who have had this discussion. What they're telling me, because of course I'm a girl and I've never experienced it, is that the worst pain is actually trying to start urinating past the prostate and during urination as compared to after urination. I have irritation from citrus. Why does this happen to patients with prostate cancer? How does this irritation occur? Is it from the prostate tissue? Why is it at the opening of the penis? Okay. So let me get my model. Hold on. This is a great, great, great question. Okay. So let's look at the pelvis here for a moment. Okay. So this is the front of the pelvis, pubic bone, hip bone, and you can see the spinal cord back here, right? And let's turn it around. So here's the back. So you can see again this vertebrae, the spinal cord. You can see the sacrum, hip bone. You can also see the tailbone. And I want you to understand that the tailbone doesn't just hang there. The tailbone is very involved with the pelvic floor. Okay. Now let's look at it from the top. So here we have pelvic floor muscles. Okay. These pelvic floor muscles lay flat. So they're along the base of the pelvis and they're up the sides of the pelvis. They're supposed to stay flat against the bone. When they get tight, they lift off of the bone. You know, they're doing this. They're like getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And as they get tight and they lift, they start squeezing things. They start squeezing blood vessels. And they start squeezing nerves. So this is why the pelvic floor is so underestimated right now, because they're the only skeletal muscles in the human body that influence major bodily functions, because they have holes in them. They got a hole for the urethra, they got a hole in women for the vagina, and a hole for the rectum. When they get tight, what do? They squeeze the urethra, they squeeze the vagina, they squeeze the rectum, but they squeeze the blood vessels. So if your bladder is supposed to get 24 units of blood a day and it's only getting half of that, are you going to have a healthy bladder wall? Of course not. Because that tissue is being deprived of oxygenation and nutrition. This is called ischemia or ischemia. Pelvic ischemia is the long-term toll of tight pelvic floor muscles and old pelvic injury. And so people who are in a state of ischemia are going to be diet sensitive. They will be diet sensitive because their bladders are not healthy. Their bladders can't be healthy because they don't have good oxygenation. But once that's restored, Once that's restored, once we get the muscles to relax and release, and now the bladder is getting proper perfusion of oxygen and nutrition, the bladder heals, the bladder wall heals, and you're back to eating a normal diet. I can eat a normal diet now. I am pelvic floor driven. So that's why a muscle person would be food sensitive at first. You know, the hardest thing for a pelvic floor driven patient is you've got all the symptoms of infection. You got frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. You go to the doctor, especially as a gentleman. You go to the doctor goes, oh, it must be infection. They give you antibiotics. They don't work. You go back to the urologist. You're still peeing all night long. Doctor goes, oh, it must be prostatitis. Let's do long-term antibiotics. They don't work. You go back to the doctor 6 months later, a year later, you've been on antibiotics for a long period of time. And the doctor goes, okay, let's try some prostate meds, or let's try some Flomax, things like that. And in the end, they don't work. You're still suffering. You're still getting up all the time. You're still having pain at the tip of your penis. You're still having all of this, even on prostate med. Why? Those medications will never fix tight muscles. It's impossible. And the great majority of men who suffer with symptoms of chronic prostatitis and interstitial cystitis have old pelvic injuries, usually from sports, falling, football. I mean, listen, I've worked with professional football players. I've worked with Ironman athletes. Lots of different traumas, athletics, etc., can create over time muscles that are just getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. Till finally, we've got somebody with really active ischemia and a really bad urinary symptom. So I'm not surprised that you've got diet sensitivity, and I'm not surprised that you've got pain at the tip of your penis, because we see that all the time with guys. What we have to know is, what is the health of your pelvic floor? You know, if you have benign prostate hyperplasia, that basically means, I mean, and this is the reality. I mean, listen, women complain about having periods when we're young and all the tests that we have to have while we're going through periods and pelvics and all that sort of stuff. Guys can't relate to that. Guys have their reckoning with benign prostate hyperplasia because as they get older, their prostate gets larger and it starts to interfere with urine flow. It starts to intrude into the urethra, and it obstructs urethra and obstructs urine flow. And so, you know, this is a very, very difficult, delicate problem for men over time. It's awful because then you have to find a way of treating it. So, you know, if they found that you got benign prostate hyperplasia and that's interfering in your urethra, you're probably going to have a TURP. Probably going to have some sort of procedure that's going to roto-root up your urethra and clean out that tissue so that you can pee again easily. But if they haven't found hyperplasia interfering in your urethra, then we have to look beyond that and look instead at your pelvic floor. Are there any special nutritional supplements for chronic non-bacterial prostatitis? Yes. There are a number of different types of supplements that have been used. Let me see. I'm talking for men. Well, here, I have one. Where did I put it? Here it is. So here's one. It's called Uroprostus. And this is for recurring prostate and urinary discomfort. And it has It's got N-acetylcysteine, it's got curcumin, it's got quercetin, it's got PEA to calm pain down, grapeseed extract, bromelain, little bit of green tea, and pumpkin seed extract. So this, but I don't know if this is still available. I have got, we're discontinuing it. I probably have 7 or 8 bottles left, and I'm just giving these away for free to any gentleman out there who might have prostate issues. They expire next November. So if anybody if anybody has any husbands with prostate issues, or if you happen to be a gentleman and you want to try it, just email me, icnetwork@mac.com. And I'll send you a bottle, no charge. Although it'd be really nice if you could make a little donation to the IC Network to cover the postage. And I can't ship it for free to Saudi Arabia. You would have to pay. I'm happy to give it to you, but you'd have to pay for the shipping. Is most chronic non-bacterial prostatitis caused by the pelvic floor? Yes, I think it is. But there are certainly other things that could be playing a role too. But the pelvic floor is often underestimated. I want to know why the burning sensation is greater after urinating in the opening of the penis, and why the irritation from citrus fruits. The irritation from citrus fruits is compromised skin. Your skin is vulnerable. Acid from citrus is penetrating through the tissue and causing pain. So whether that's in your bladder or in your urethra, that's just happening. That's what citrus does. The far more important question is why is your skin vulnerable in the first place? And the reason why your skin would be very vulnerable would be because of ischemia from tight pelvic floor muscles. Janie says, is there anything for women? Girl, yes, we've got a lot of stuff for women and men, but we've got Bladder Builder, we've got Bladder Rest, we've got Cystomen, and then we have the Femetry line of products too. Femetry 1, 2, 3. Femetry 1 is a floral balance for use when you're doing antibiotics, and if you struggle with recurring UTI. Femetry 2 is a very soothing bladder formula, and Femetry 3 is an acid reducer, kind of like Pre-Leaf, that you can use when you're eating. So that's something that you can do too. The burning sensation occurs after urination. It's at the opening of the penis. It lasts for 2 hours and is not bacterial. I suffer a lot. Is this due to the prostate? What is the solution? Honey, have you tried lidocaine? Does lidocaine make it go away? A lidocaine ointment is a numbing agent, right? That would be fascinating to find. We would call this an anesthetic challenge. Is to try a lidocaine jelly at the entrance of your urethra, and does that turn the pain off? Because that will help us differentiate between a skin problem in your penis as compared to a pelvic floor problem deeper up. So have you ever tried any lidocaine? That would be interesting. And the other thing too is, it's interesting that it's lasting for 2 hours, because I would have to wonder if you're having a pelvic floor spasm from straining. So are you straining to push urine out? You have to push hard to get that urine out. If you are, you're tightening those muscles, and it may take 2 hours for those muscles to relax and release again. Janie, over on the IC Network website, icnetwork.org, That's our main educational website. That's where you can find our free master class, just videos you can watch and all sorts of stuff like that. We also have a shop. And in our shop, we sell books and chair cushions and heating pads, and we do have supplements. We definitely do have supplements. Um, um, I never intended to have the IC Network sell supplements. We're a health education company, and we run support groups. But what changed my mind was a patient called who had been told the only treatment for her IC was surgery. And she had that surgery, and it didn't work for her. And she found the IC Network, and she called me to talk about what was going on with her. Her doctor did not even tell her that there were other treatments. She didn't know about antihistamine. She didn't know about Elmeron. She didn't know about so much. And most of all, she didn't know that there were even supplements that she could try. And this was clearly a urologist. This was an old urologist in Colorado who's not practicing anymore, who just used this as an opportunity to make money. I mean, he just scheduled surgery for everybody, and it was reprehensible. And that was like, Jill, people need a safe place where they can learn about the depth and variety of treatment options out there, from not only supplements to traditional therapies and surgeries and things like that. And so that's my goal, is to just show you that there's diversity. But even more so today now, remember, we don't even think of IC as a bladder disease anymore. We haven't for at least 5, 6, 7 years now. IC is now recognized as a pelvic pain syndrome for which there are many potential causes. We now recognize distinct patient groups. So we've got patients with Hunner's lesions. They have Hunner lesion treatment. We got patients with bladder wall-driven symptoms like estrogen atrophy. We have a lot of patients with tight pelvic floor muscles, and we have a lot of patients with widespread pain. Each of these groups have different treatment. So we don't want to waste 20 years doing a bladder therapy for a pelvic floor problem. We know physical therapy works. And if you look at our national guidelines now, there's only 2 treatment recommendations. All the traditional therapies are now considered options. Recommendation number 1 is if you think a patient has Hunner's lesions, look for them and treat them. Because the number 1 cause of intense pain over time in a typical IC patient is an untreated Hunner's lesion. And recommendation number 2 is if this patient has tight pelvic floor muscles, send them to physical therapy immediately. You understand how different that is from where we were 20 years ago? Because 20 years ago, if you were diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, you were given Elmeron in the diet and an antidepressant and an antihistamine. And then, see ya. We'll see you in a year. Good luck. And the problem is that didn't work for the great majority of patients. It did not work. Now we understand why it didn't work, because now we have phenotype. And now we know that 85% of patients, 85% of patients have a neuromuscular disorder. 85% of patients have tight pelvic floor muscle. I had tight pelvic floor muscle. I did bladder therapies and installations for years, never got better. Got so bad, I was honestly suicidal at times. Once we figured out that, my bladder is perfectly healthy, but my pelvic floor was as hard as a rock. Once I started physical therapy, that's when I got better. So phenotyping determines treatment. So phenotyping also determines kind of the supplement that you would use. So Hunner's lesion, if you got Hunner's lesions, then the supplement that makes the most sense is lactoferrin, because we have research showing that lactoferrin helped Hunner's lesions heal. If you've got estrogen atrophy, then you're looking at a chondroitin-based supplement like Bladder Builder or Bladder Rest. If you're in a flare, okay, then you can do maybe an aloe soothing supplement, but aloe now has a very, very small role in this phenotyping mode. If you've got tight pelvic floor muscles, then you got to put your money into physical therapy, because we know physical therapy can basically heal you. The greatest success rate, the single most effective study out there, is the pelvic floor physical therapy study. If you've got pudendal neuralgia, we're going to calm nerves down and we're going to relax muscles. So again, your money needs to be in physical therapy, but you're also going to be doing things that will help calm a very irritated nerve down, like Peora, PEA, like topical lidocaine on the skin. And then if you've got widespread pain, central sensitization, we now know what causes that too. That's the central nervous system. That relates to injury to the central nervous system. And so we're going to be doing things that calm nerves down. Patients who have widespread pain, we have a fantastic research team called the Chronic Pain Research Alliance, and they're the ones who solve the mystery. Because patients who have multiple pain conditions, IC, vulvodynia, TMJ, migraines, fibro, when they looked at our central nervous system, because this is my group, this is also my group, I'm in two groups, what they find is a brain living in a constant state of fight or flight. The 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, our brain is behaving as if our life is at stake. And that's simply not normal. Normally, fight or flight is short, a couple of hours. It's not supposed to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And unfortunately, when you are in a state of fight or flight, it amplifies pain throughout the entire body. The entire central nervous system becomes more sensitive. Now, why does this happen? What the research shows is that for 80% of the children who end up developing widespread pain as an adult, there is a history of a major physical injury. So I have worked with patients who have been hit by cars. I've worked with patients who have fallen down many stairs. I've worked with patients who are big athletes and suffered athletic injuries, falling off ski lifts, things like that. It takes 14 days of pain to put the brain into a constant state of fight or flight. One of the patients I was working with had a broken back in high school. Her mother did not believe her, sent her to school for 3 weeks in agonizing pain. They finally got her to the hospital. She had a broken back. She struggled with widespread pain her entire life. Okay. For the other 20%, it's a history of abuse or bullying. And almost every day, I talk with a patient who has been abused in some way. And on Friday, it was Thursday or Friday, it's an IC patient suffered from fairly horrific physical abuse from a parent. And then another one suffered physical abuse from a mother, one from a dad, one from a mother. And when you're a child living in that environment where you are being abused and bullied, physically and or emotionally, your child's brain is trying to save your life because it is a genuine physical threat. Your brainstem has one job: to save your life. And the way it tries to save your life is it monitors your sensory input. What do you hear? Is it a song or is it your mother screaming at you? What are you touching? Is it something hot burning you, or is it a puppy? What are you tasting? Is it your favorite ice cream, or is it something that's very hot and bittery and painful? When your brainstem senses a threat, it takes over. The sympathetic nervous system takes entire control of your central nervous system because and it puts you into a state of fight or flight, because that's how a body reacts to stress. Do you have to run for your life, etc.? So this little child's brain from a very, very young age is just trying to cope with the stress. It's trying to save their life. Now, I have shared my story. I grew up in a neighborhood with a kid my age who later became a rapist and murderer. I was attacked in fourth grade. I ran to school as fast as I could. I ran home as fast as I could because I never knew when I was going to get hurt. And I was hurt. I was hurt. I wasn't raped because he was too young and I was too young, but I was physically hurt. And the year I went away to college, he raped and murdered my neighbor. Okay, so think about what that did to my brain. That my only safe place was home. As soon as I woke up in the morning, which was usually my dad singing, "You gotta get up, you gotta get up, you gotta get up in the morning," I went into fight or flight. And this was back when we walked to school. So then I started walking to school, looking over my shoulder. The closer I got to school, the more hypervigilant I became. I was on a hair trigger at school. My brain was just looking for the threat. And I wasn't the only one. A lot of us were affected. I have friends who will never come back to my town. They were so traumatized by what happened. They have panic attacks just trying to set foot in my town based upon what they went through. And then I would run home. And again, the only place I felt truly safe was at home. The home I'm living in now, ironically. So how did my brain respond to that trauma? Well, number one, I had stomach aches in elementary school. I used to go to school with a roll of Tums. I developed frequency urgency in junior high. I couldn't sit through class. The teachers complained. I developed vulvodynia in high school. I developed IBS in my 20s. I developed panic attacks in my 20s. I had migraines in my 20s. Then I had IC in my early 30s. This is characterized by very sensitive skin, a wicked sense of smell. You can smell things that other people can't smell. Smell is a brain function. Smell is a sensory function. And you know, when you're the patient, when you're the child growing up to be an adult, and this happens to you, it makes no sense. It's like, wait, I've got a bladder pain. Now I have bowel pain. Now I have this. Now I have that. Why, God? I thought I was being punished. I thought it was my fault. And I will tell you that in my 20s, even though I was very successful and I got through grad school and I was a presidential fellow, on the inside, I was a mess. And it was all driven by trauma. And once research came out, which showed this connection, it's like, oh, wait a second, you mean it's not my fault? No, Jill, it's not your fault. This is what happens when a child is exposed to prolonged periods of intense stress. No shame, no blame. I carry no shame for any of it now. It's never my fault, ever. And it's not your fault either. And I always end the conversations that I have with patients who have gone through this to say, not your fault. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. This is your body. This is the way a child's brain adapts to persistent stress. But as adults, what we have to do now that we know it, now that we recognize it, now that we see that anxiety amplifies pain, it is our responsibility as an adult to kind of take charge of that. So we've got to, and the thing is a lot of us have already done that. We're not happy in cities. We're in the country. We're happier in a quieter environment. We already don't have strong chemicals in our home. We've done that for years. We never knew why, but we've done that for years. But that missing piece was just tackling the anxiety once and for all, because when pain is accompanied by anxiety in the brain, it is amplified by the brain. When pain is accompanied by laughter in the brain, it is minimized by the brain. So we do have to work hard to learn better anxiety management skills and just deal with the anxiety once and for all so that it's not poking and prodding our nervous system. So, for example, EMDR therapy is an example of a trauma therapy that can go back and kind of remove the trauma aspect from the event. And it's kind of like physical reprogramming of your nervous system through either eye movements or tapping. And so this is our widespread pain group. I can teach you techniques to turn off fight or flight. The thing is, we just have to keep it turned off. The blessing for me was I had so many panic attacks after my IC started. I mean, it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back of my anxiety, was dealing with this intense pain. And I used to have panic attacks before going to the doctor. And I would, I got there. I would have panic attacks before job interviews. I would have panic attacks getting on a plane, and I would have panic attacks before going to the doctor. And I would be miserable. I mean, I got there, but I was miserable. And one day, as I was having a panic attack in my backyard, I just went, Jill, clearly you are missing a piece of this puzzle. You clearly need help with your anxiety. And I signed up for an anxiety management class that completely changed my life. I have not had a panic attack since I took the anxiety management class. I just needed a little boost on skills, because God didn't give you the skills to deal with trauma when you were a kid or when you were born. We have to learn things. And there's no shame in going and talking to somebody who specializes in trauma, because they know how to turn it off. So I did EMDR last winter. I loved it. It was great. Katie said, after 5 years with IC, I understand that medical trauma can be a real thing. And Katie, that's like a really good point, because if you look at the AUA guidelines, the very first time they were done, which I think was in 2008, they acknowledged the trauma of IC patients, the medical trauma. If you had the symptoms of IC and you went to a urologist, number one, you were often minimized, told it was all in your head. You had repeated catheterizations that hurt like hell. And then they did a hydrodistension. And back then they did hydrodistensions in the doctor's office without anesthesia. Can you imagine? My friend Evelyn, I remember she told me she was at UC Irvine, and they used her hydrodistension as an opportunity to educate residents. So she was in a small stadium, in the center of a stadium, having a hydrodistension, as like 100 young doctors were around her screaming bloody murder. You got to honor her for that. So AUA acknowledged that most patients never went back to the urologist because they were manhandled physically, mentally, and emotionally. And if you look at our current AUA guidelines, they're talking about reducing trauma. We have to understand the errors of our pathways. We have to understand how these patients were treated. And now when they work with the urologist, it's about comfort and it's about being gentle. We have to be gentle now. And for the widespread pain patient, once a doctor does the phenotyping, they start assessing for widespread pain. And we've got somebody with a hair trigger on their nervous system. They might not even do a cystoscopy, because the last thing they want to do is turn the nerves on. I asked Chris Payne, I said, what do you do when you have a patient come in who's got really severe central sensitization? And his answer is, man, I back away slowly. I don't want to do anything that's going to poke and prod that nervous system. So a lot of things have really, really changed, my friends. But medical trauma is real. I have medical trauma. My medical trauma relates to a radiologist who did a hydrodistension against my urologist's specific orders. And I got her fired. She deserved to be fired. She refused to read the urologist's instructions and hurt me badly. I mean, I was screaming in pain. I walked out of that that was avoiding cystogram, sobbing. I just collapsed. My mother was waiting for me. She had never seen me. I mean, I was a broken woman, and she deserved to be fired. Nicole says, do I experience restless leg syndrome at night? Not often. My feet get hot. I've had this since I was young. My feet get really, really hot, so I have to put a thick lotion on my feet. Every now and then, I'll be a little bit restless leggy, but not very, very often. Anybody else out there? Do you guys suffer from restless leg syndrome? Oh. 1 year anniversary. Breast cancer surgery, 9 days away. I don't know if I'm handling it well. I don't know if I'm handling it well. I find myself going back a year ago and revisiting how I felt, which was utter terror at the time. Send me strength. I'm going to film a video. Also, guys, because I have a breast cancer vlog along with my IC vlogs on my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, this is our latest magazine, the IC Optimist. This is what our members get. And I have massively updated our flare management guide. And now we are including lots of different types of flares rather than the typical bladder wall or pelvic floor flare. So just to kind of show you, on my magazine, we always have an affirmation page, and we get into it. The first section is understanding flares based upon phenotyping. So this guide helps you predict the type of flares you're going to be vulnerable to based upon your phenotype. Along with this section, it's not embedded infection. Our first section is bladder wall flares. And whenever you see the little redhead on the PDF, that's me talking to you. So we have risk factors, triggers. So the people at most risk of a bladder wall flare is going to be a Hunner's lesion patient or a GSM patient or a chemocystitis patient. We've got the common triggers, and we've got the rescue plan, what to do in the first hour, what to do in the second hour. Okay, so that's the first one. And long-term, and when to visit the ER, and asking for help. The next flare is the pelvic floor flare. So the pelvic floor flares are going to happen after sex, after driving in a car, stumbling, falling. So it has triggers, rescue plan, but it also has the stretches you can do to relax your pelvic floor. Then we have the pelvic neuralgia flare from muscle squeezing nerves. And again, the triggers, like the trigger direct trauma, sitting on a hard surface, driving, bicycling or spinning, straining to have a bowel movement, childbirth, weightlifting, an outbreak of herpes, and intense stress that has the potential of triggering this type of flare. And we have our rescue plan. And my friends, look at this. We have the stress flare, because so many of us have had flares during periods of very, very intense stress. Because when you're under stress, what do? You tighten muscles, it amplifies everything, nervous system gets worked up. And so we talk about, so what are the triggers for a stress flare? I just obviously stress from like work or at home, caffeine, chemical exposures. but also restricted restroom access. I mean, if you're in a situation where you can't find a bathroom, or you're denied access to a restroom, like on a plane, that's going to trigger a stress flare. And we have a lot of exercises on what you can do to get yourself out of that stress flare. From the I Spy technique, reflexercise, the power pose, tapping, etc. Then we have the menstrual flare, what to do when you're having a flare during your period. The urethra flare. What do you do when your urethra starts screaming at you? So why does the urethra, what will trigger a urethral flare? Catheterizations, testing, estrogen atrophy, infection, muscle tension, chemical irritation like bubble bath, menstrual pad, things like that. And we've got a really good rescue plan for that. Vulvodynia flare. Have you ever felt like you had a bad yeast infection, but the doctor finds no sign of yeast? That was me while I was in high school and college. At least once a month, I had to use Monistat cream to soothe the vulva and vagina that felt like they were on fire. There were moments when I couldn't even wear underwear. Today, we now know that this is often the result of tight muscles squeezing the pudendal nerve. It can also occur with estrogen atrophy, yeast or viral infections, irritation from chemicals, and even menstrual pads. Bubble baths and bath bombs can be very irritating as well. Anyway, we talked about that. We've got our rectal flare, because who hasn't had a sore bum? Like, seriously, all of it. The sex flare and the allergy flare. So if you're a member of the IC network, and if you paid the $25 for the electronic versions, you can log in right now and download this. I've already had a lot of calls back, and people are saying it's the best one we've ever done. And I think it is. I think it's really, really good. If you have it mailed to you, you should have it. I would hope you would have it. I think they went out in the mail about 5 days ago. Peggy said, "Hello, Jill. The new magazine is great. You've been through a hell of a year." Thank you. Thank you, honey. But this is also available for individual purchase. So you can just buy this on your own. So just go to the IC Network shop. It's on the front page. You can just buy it as a single copy to have a flare guide for you. I also want you to know that we are expanding this massively for our new IC 101 Guide to Managing IC Flares. This is 36 page. The big guide is going to be like 80 pages. It's almost done now. And that's our companion to our book, IC 101. And then after that, we're going to do the IC 101 diet guide. That's also already half done, if not more. And so we will have 3 IC 101 books. Hold on a sec. Lori says, I've been getting pancreatitis attacks, and my bladder always gets super angry at the same time. Could it be pain in one area that is affecting the bladder? Boy, Lori, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know where. I mean, hold on. Well, we can here. That's easy. Hold on. Does pancreas pain refer to the pelvis? Yes, pancreatic pain can refer to the pelvis, although it's not the most common location. Common areas for pancreatic pain referral is upper abdomen. Back pain often radiates from the upper abdomen to the back, and lower back. While less frequent, severe abdominal, pelvic, and lower back pain are listed as potential symptoms of pancreatitis. Additionally, in cases of advanced, yikes, okay. Interesting. Peggy said, oh, let's see, hold on. Lisa said, I had a major panic after they told me I needed to replace my Foley. I remember, hun, we talked. I made them give me meds. Good. Excellent. I'm glad they did. Excellent. My sister had an MRI. You know, MRIs suck because if you have struggled with being in a tight place, being in a long hollow tube where the wall is like 2 inches above your nose, that's making very, very loud noises, MRIs can truly be a test of your resilience, and some people simply cannot do it. And that's a perfect example of where Xanax, the one time I had an MRI, thank God for Xanax. And even then, it was challenging. You just have to keep your eyes closed. And I don't know why they don't talk to you. If they could just talk to you during the test, it would be so much easier. Or played music or something. But you know, 30 minutes, you can do it for 30 minutes. I counted by 7. As long as I kept counting by 7, I kept my brain away from panic. When I stopped counting, that's when I started feeling more anxious. So I just closed my eyes and just counted. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, you know. I think I got to like 600 or more. I think I did it twice. Oh, Marlia said, I had restless leg syndrome and found a great discovery, magnesium lotion and magnesium spray. It worked like a miracle. I was desperate. My legs jumped for hours at night. I saw someone selling magnesium balm on a shopping show and bragged about how it worked for restless legs. I can't believe the relief I get from this. You know, that reminds me, I did buy a magnesium spray. I wonder where I put it. I remember reading that. So for restless legs, Nicole, a magnesium spray or a magnesium balm. I mean, Google it and see and read about it. Katie, is there anything you can do to prevent a menstruation flare? Oh, honey. Oh, you know, menstruation flares are kind of an opportunistic flare. That if your bladder wall is already a little bit provoked, if your pelvic floor is already a little bit provoked, that change in hormones just kind of adds to it all. And so I think that making sure your pelvic floor is in good shape is important. If you've got tight pelvic floor muscles, making sure you're working on that to try to keep your muscles relax and release is important. I think following the diet, being a little bit more conservative with your diet a couple of days before your period is the right thing to do. Would be a good experiment at least. And then muscle relaxants. Muscle relaxants would be, you know, when you're in perimenopause, what happens is your periods become more frequent. So instead of every 28 days, mine shifted to every 21 days. And instead of a 5-day slow trickle, my perimenopause periods were 2-day bombs with really bad cramping. And I mean, I can still remember my period started like an hour before we were supposed to leave for a Christmas Eve dinner. And I was like, I'm not going. Sorry. I was all dressed, ready to go. No. And everybody was looking at me like, what's wrong with Jill? Like, what's wrong with Jill? It's like, period. Leave me alone. You all go. I'm staying with my heating pad and a little bit of pain med. And they were all quite angry at me. Yeah, you're going to ruin Christmas again. Sorry, honey. I am in agony right now. But the most important thing about the menstruation flares is that they go away. The healthier you get and the better your muscles get, the better your bladder gets. It just takes the power away from the menstrual flare and it will get better. Deb said, had an MRI 4 weeks ago and I had to use meds. They put an eye mask on you. The eye mask is brilliant. The meds are important. Girl, they found an aneurysm and an old stroke. Very scared on top of this pain. Oh, honey. Well, the cool thing is that you didn't even know you'd had a stroke, which means it didn't affect you significantly. And so that's actually kind of comforting. But you can now take preventative measures with that stroke. I bet they have you on blood thinners now. And the aneurysm, that's the tricky part. Cipro is now linked to the development of aneurysms. So did you take a lot of Cipro for your bladder? I want you to know that it's not your fault if you did. And it's far more important to know than it is to not know. Deb says, true, I went for dizziness, and yes, you're on the blood thinners. And you know you didn't do the Cipro. Okay. Sometimes it can be genetic, and sometimes you just don't know. I had an aunt who had a brain aneurysm, and it was fine. I mean, she was fine afterwards. They caught it early. So at least you have information here. And so you know what now you have a better clue of what the warning signs can be. Hopefully they will have, the blood thinners make a lot of sense. There might be other medications that they can do. I think the one thing that, if I were in your shoes, what I would do is I would have, I don't know how many people are around you, if you live alone or not. I think that would be a really good reason to have one of those medic alert things so that if something happens, you can click it and get help right away. It's not a bad idea. If you're alone for long periods of time, I would be really tempted to have one of those clickers. And I'm so sorry, honey. Man, the last thing you need is to have something like this that would worry you. You should have tremendous comfort in your body. You had one and you didn't even know it. Your body knew what to do. So true. She says, so true. Thank you for the support. I'm glad I have my family here, and that's a great idea. Thank you so very much. You are welcome, honey. You are welcome. And just, I don't know, when you're younger, you're like, the world is my oyster. It's like, I am strong, I can do anything I want, and you do not understand how life changes when you have health problems and a health challenge. And that moment that you do, it's awakening in a way. It is a reset, because prior to that, the most important thing might have been the car you drove or how much money you made. After that, I could care less what car I need. I need friends who will help me. And it really reorganizes your brain to the far more important priorities here. Because 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember what you drove and how much money you made. They are going to remember if you helped. Deb says, exactly, Jill. I was great up until late January. I knew something wasn't right. Yes, it changes everything for sure. And I think the other thing too is the health anxiety is real. So like I was doing like 10 days ago, I was at the gym and I noticed that I had a little thing right there, right? And I was looking at that going, what is that? Now my cancer was on the other side, not on my right side. It was on my left side. And I was like looking at this going, oh my God, is this cancer? No, do I now have cancer on my right side? And I will tell you, I spent about 18 hours absolutely freaking out. And then the next morning I looked at it and I went, now wait a second here. Whoops. I might, if you can see it up close, it's fat. And I have it on this side too, just not quite as pronounced. It's like, oh come on, no, chill. Number one, it's the exact texture of fat. And then I did show it to a medical provider last week, and they went, it's fat. It's not a lymph node. There's no lymph nodes right there. It is absolutely just fat. But the challenge is that once you've dealt with something that's life threatening, it's really easy to tweak that anxiety. Hey RD, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Health anxiety for sure. Yeah, it's just when I started the day at an estate sale and it was really, really cold. They left the air conditioner on all night. And I said, guys, it's really cold. What's happening? And I had to go back out to my car and get a jacket. And I came back in and said, I'm recovering from breast cancer. And my chest does not like it when I get really cold. And like 3 other women popped up and said, you too? And we had this nice little breast cancer meetup. And just, they were so comforting because I was the most recent one. And I was explaining what I was going through. And they went, oh, you're still early. You're still early. You're not even at a year yet. Going to take a couple years. I'm like, God bless America. So annoying. So, okay. So we have been going now for 3 hours. I will give you the offer. If anybody wants to go into Zoom, we can go into Zoom and we can have a conversation. So the challenge with doing this is I can't hear you. All you can do is type. I am more than happy to open up a Zoom window. And if anybody wants to go into Zoom and ask questions, we can do that. If not, I'm here as long as you have questions. When you're done, I can be done. You tell me. I think it's been a good meeting today. Nicole said, I just bought my digital IC Optimus. Excellent, honey. I hope it gives you out. I hope it gives you some good ideas. See, my incisions just zap me. Oh, you can see. You can see. There they are. Well healed. Lisa, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the stars. Really appreciate it. And if you guys, if you like these meetings, come on over to the IC Network and become a member. You can get our magazine. I do believe that's where we do our best work by far. Or you can buy stuff in our shop, and that's what keeps me going. My intention here, knock on wood, is to work until I'm 70. It is crazy. I will be 65 years old in 2 weeks. Now, I don't feel 65. I feel like 30. but I am indeed getting a wee bit older. And my goal here is to try to, well, I'm perfectly capable of working and I like my job. So I'm just going to keep doing this as long as I can. But there may come a time when I stop. We'll see. Knock on wood. Hopefully not for many years. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anybody take me up on a Zoom meeting. Nicole says, "Have you watched any of the breast cancer blog?" I have. Thank you. She says, "You come so far." I am in pain every day. I will tell you. I have allodynia, so there are times when nothing can touch it. Um, and then there are times when it needs compression, that if I don't have something on it, it hurts more. So it's been quite a journey. Marlia says, try magnesium on your incision, Jill. I can't rave enough about it. Ooh, isn't that okay? Like a magnesium balm? Hey, man, I'll try anything because this sucker is tight. It is tight. I mean, but the thing is it's not tight. It's a sensation of tightness, but my incisions are not restricted at all. Deb says, "Do you have to do phys?" Yes, I have been doing physical therapy. The problem is that it's nerves. It's not the muscle. I only have a little bit, just a tiny bit of lymphedema, just like right here. Um, just a tiny bit. But I will tell you, every time I do physical therapy, I cry on the way home. I did physical therapy last week. I held it off, but I cried the last couple of miles. It's painful and it's a lot. And and you have to get it out. It's okay to cry. I have cried more in the last 2 years than I have cried in my entire life. And it's a release. It's a healthy release of grief and of fear and of stress. Mary says, "Can the woman Marlia, do you have a brand name? Do you have a brand name for your magnesium? I mean, I can't take a normal dose of oral magnesium because it gives me the runs. And I have been dealing with the runs for the last year because of my gallbladder. So my goal, I just try very hard to not do things that will make that worse." Marlia says, "Yes, I have lotion and spray. I can't be without it. The minute I get in bed at night, I slather." Marlia, what's the brand name? Can you go get it and tell us what the brand name is? Really appreciate that recommendation. Nicole, thank you. A lot of makeup. Definitely looking better now than 6 months ago. Mary says, "Gives me the runs as well." Deb says, "That's what happened to me as well with magnesium." I mean, like I take like a quarter of a magnesium. And so far today, I mean, this whole gallbladder thing sucks. When you lose your gallbladder, your body can't process saturated fat. So what happens is when you eat something fatty, your liver drops bile right into your intestine. And let me tell you, it's a colon cleanse. Bile diarrhea is real and it is fast, and you are lucky to get to the bathroom in time sometimes. And so my diet now, I have no butter, I have no dairy, I have no non-dairy. I can't even do those. I can't eat egg yolks. The only oil I can eat is olive oil. And I was doing Ezekiel cereal in the morning with a little bit of mocha mix, and finally connected the dots that the mocha mix was the problem. This was like 10 days ago. It's like, why am I running to the bathroom so much? And again, it's just, they say it gets better with time. Please, like, I mean, I can't go do anything um, if I eat breakfast in the morning. If I eat breakfast in the morning, I have to be near a bathroom for a few hours. It's this bile dump thing. It's awful. So I'm glad I'm not the only one who has the magnesium issue. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that you have it too. But it is what it is. It is life. All right, guys. Well, I think that, I mean, we've been here. Ow, sorry. Oh, there it goes again. Stop it. Stop it. Urgh. Just it's one spot. It's like one spot on either side. Okay, Marlia says it's Nakery Relax and Repair and Nakery Pain Therapy Cream. And Bare Botanical Spray unscented from Amazon. Here, let me see if I can find it. That's really okay. So hold on. Which one is the balm? Nakery Repair. Okay, Nakery Relax and Repair. That's like bakery, but with an N. Wow, 4.5 stars. Okay, so that's the spray. Nakerybeauty.com. And a night body balm. Oh, wow. Okay. And Deb says, what about castor oil packs or THC bombs? I haven't done a THC balm. I have done, they gave me lidocaine, and it doesn't do a damn thing for it. But look at this Nakery Magnesium Body Balm. Hold on a sec. Let's see what these pictures. Marlia, thank you for the recommendation. Wow. Oh, and look at that. They have a cool down body cream for when you're feeling hot. And a pain therapy cream. What is this? Nakery Beauty Pain Cream. Let's see what that is. Okay. What's in it? Magnesium, menthol, arnica, capsicum, St. John wort, and eucalyptus. Oh. Wow, what a great recommendation. And then what is Bare Botanical Body Spray? Bare Botanical Skincare. Oh, here it is. Bare Botanics Magnesium Oil Spray. Four stars. Let's see what the reviews say. On Amazon, I always go to the reviews. And Customers report magnesium oil helps them sleep better, with one noting it's great for settling in for the night. Some find it greasy while others say it's sticky and made their feet itch. Huh. Interesting. I think I like the Nakery. Let's see if Amazon has Nakery. Ah, they do. Yeah, look at this. They've got, wow, and 4.5 stars. Nakery Total Body Magic Magnesium Spray. You know, I think I'm going to get the balm and I'm going to try it on. Wow, 5 stars for the balm. Okay, you know what? I'm buying it. Buy now. Hold on. I better make sure there's nothing else in my um, shopping cart. You know, sometimes you put stuff in your shopping cart and then you go, oh, I forgot I did that. So hold on a sec. I have to do 2-step verification. Nope, that's not it. All right, I did not receive my 2-step verification. Send it to me, Amazon. Send it to me. Okay. Text me. Okay, let's see. Now, personally, I always think when technology doesn't work for one reason or another, that's one of my guardian angels saying, wait and think about it. And I am not getting my two-factor authentication, so apparently I'm going to think about it now. Nicole says, how do you spell the balm? It is, here, hold on. That's my philosophy for all things technological that just suddenly don't work. Marlia says, Nakery Ultra Strength Pain Therapy Cream has arnica. And she says, I'm telling you, it's amazing. You buy it on the HSN shopping show, but it's on Amazon too. I'm going to try it. I'm just going to have to buy it on my iPad because I am not getting my two-factor authentication. Let me look one more time. We'll see. Otherwise, the gods are saying, not right now, Jill, not right now. Nope. It's definitely a not right now moment. Okay, let's see if it'll, okay, hold on. No. Oh, wait. Oh, I got it. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm buying it. Done. I feel blessed that I can buy it because I know other people are struggling, and I do not know what's going to happen with our Medicaid patients. Just got a text from somebody about starting a supplement. Yeah, and I just say you can start with one and see how you do. All right. Okay, so let me give you so it's Nakery Beauty. Check on Amazon. It's a magnesium spray, balm, etc. Hey, listen, Marlia, girl, if this stops my pain, you're going to be an ICN member for a couple of years on the house because it has worn me out to deal with this. I will find a way to say thank you. I promise you. All right. Well, I think it's time for the cows to go home. I'm wearing my cow earrings. That's the other nice thing about getting old. You can just wear whatever you want and not worry about what anybody thinks of you. All right. I think we're going to call it. What time is it? 4:24. We have been going for 3.5 hours. Yeah, baby. Good meeting. So my intention is to be here. Well, can I just look at, hold on a sec. I better look at the schedule here. When is the 4th? Okay, so the 4th, wait, hold on. Okay, July 4th is next Friday. Okay. So that's a big holiday weekend. If I can do a meeting, I'll do a meeting. Deb says 9:24 in Australia. Hey, thanks for catching in early. I had, was it you who reached out to me from Australia a couple of days ago? No, who was that? Who was that? Was that you? I had a real contact from somebody in Australia. What were you talking? We were talking, but no, it's a professional. It wasn't a patient. But I talk to patients all the time. But oh, I don't even remember. Anyway, our challenge with Australia is we do not have a national nonprofit. So every time an IC group has gotten started in Australia, they've shut down. And there have probably been 5 or 6 in the last 30 years. And without that nonprofit, we're just losing opportunities to have meetings, go to meetings, to advocate for patients, and to run classes for doctors and ground rounds for doctors. So unfortunately, I love Australia, and I want to go. My next international trip, if I can get everything else to calm down, I would love to come to Australia. If y'all will let Americans in, God only knows what's going to happen with that. Hold on a sec. I wanted to see if they had yeah, okay. So there is a pelvic pain foundation. So pelvicpain.org.au. looks at, oh, look at this. They're having a seminar in September. Selling tickets right now. Pelvic pain and performance, athletes, workplace, and neurodiversity. It's in Brisbane. So let's see if they have IC in here. Yeah, they do. All right, let's see what they say about this. Oh my God, they've got Elmer on listed. No, 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 no. You know, Deb, I'm going to reach out to them and see if we can collaborate with them. Okay. So this is great. When did it start? About the foundation. Oh, they don't say. Here, hold on. Let's look at who's on the board. Hey, you know what, Deb? Go over to their website and take a look at their board. Because these are all practitioners, and there may be somebody near you. They've got physical therapists. The chair is a gynecologist. General practitioner, another general practitioner in women's health and chronic pain. She's in Adelaide. Yeah, pelvicpain.org.au. Okay, go check it out. And I will send them an email. Hello, Diane. Diane says, hi, Jill. I'm trying the estradiol patch and progesterone pill to see if it helps with my estrogen atrophy. I see symptoms. I'm still using the vaginal estradiol cream. Gyne said I need to. It's helping with my energy and sleep. My gyne isn't concerned about cancer or heart disease risk because she said that it's a bioavailable form. Well, that'll be interesting, hon. I would be very interested to hear more about the cancer or the heart disease risk. So is she saying is that the form you're taking is more bioavailable or less bioavailable? She's very pro HRT with the patch. I'm wondering if anyone has had improvement in IC symptoms. My symptoms got severe about 2 years after menopause. Yep. Patients who fall into that genitourinary syndrome of menopause group have gotten better on any number of forms of estrogen. Our challenge is just reducing the risk of cancer. And so the preference is doing the topical estrogen as compared to an oral estrogen. The estrogen patch bypasses the liver, if I remember correctly. And so the estrogen patch is considered less risky than the pill. If I remember correctly, don't quote me on that. You know, what's really sad are, yeah, that's it, Deb, pelvicpain.org.au. Check them out. Check them out. It always breaks my heart when, you know, you find a patient who at some point in time had a hysterectomy in their 30s or 40s, total hysterectomy, and they were never educated about what estrogen loss does. And so, and I was working with one patient this week who, or last week, who, like, literally 6 months after she had her hysterectomy, her bladder went crazy and she had all the symptoms of IC. And it's like, and you know, in your brain you're going infection, 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 it's got to be infection. And of course her cultures were negative and she was so confused. And when we were talking, it's like, okay, anything happen? You know, I think the most important question you can ask a patient, is there any event that you associate with your onset of your symptoms? And her answer was, well, it started after a hysterectomy. My question was it a total hysterectomy? She said, yes. I was like, okay. Has anybody taught you about what happens when you lose estrogen? She said, no. And we had this whole discussion about GSM, and she's like, oh, that would explain it all. All right, guys, I think we're done. My voice is starting to give out. I will knock on wood. See you next week. We are going into a fire warning tomorrow. We have officially entered fire season. So send good vibes about fires in California. Because you never know. All right, I'll see you guys. I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube first. Bye, YouTube. See you later.